Chapter 478. At night, looking at the two sleeping girls on the ground, Luo Ye put his hand on his chest and breathed a sigh of relief. Although Luo Ye was the most powerful among them, his combat style leaned toward the traditional Kursmincer. Except for the Gulan Daer, Pei Tila and Altatia's skills were long-range release. Judging from the attributes of the Kursmincer himself, Luo Ye was indeed not good at close combat. It was precisely because of this that Selena and Juliana took such actions after discovering the enemy. They wanted to restrain the enemy and buy time for Luo Ye. However, the final result was that the enemy's curse vessel launched first. Luo Ye did not expect this situation, and it also put the three of them in danger. If they were really affected by the savior, they would never show such an expression. It was better to say that it was impossible for them to fall asleep at all. Instead, they would shout crazily or hide in the corner, curl up their bodies, and mutter something with a collapsed expression. It was obvious that these people did not want their sand value to drop to zero. It was a result of the savior's influence, so they were not considered cultists. At most, they were pitiful people who had been harmed. However, due to the strength of high-level transcendence, these people could be very destructive when they went crazy, and they could not be dealt with like ordinary victims. President, there is no problem with Selena's curse. They should be asleep. Because of his concern, Luo Ye deliberately asked the old Chinese medicine doctor, Stuart, who had just been rescued, to check their pulses. The young man with many magic eyes glanced at the two, and he did not see any abnormalities in the flow of the girl's curse power. Luo Ye, who heard this, was finally completely relieved. In this night of bad news one after another, this was the only thing that could make Luo Ye feel gratified. After picking up the two in each hand, Luo Ye took them directly to Lillian. On the other hand, after Paul recovered, he went to report his safety to Lillian. After all, Paul was also a member of the Archmen tribe, and he couldn't just ignore her. And now, as the only channel of communication between Lillian and Luo Ye, Paul's role became more and more prominent, and the number of times he ran between them increased. Paul, the original member of Team 1, went to report. Luo Ye and Stuart, the two members of Team 2, seized the time to start their mission. As a support group, Luo Ye and others brought a lot of potions and curse vessels. When Team 1 was crazy, and the rest were still in shock, Luo Ye and others couldn't do nothing. Such thoughts naturally appeared in his mind, but reality proved that everything was futile. After being busy for a while, Luo Ye and Stuart walked out of the room. They leaned against the wall and sighed. I just took a look with my eyes. The flow of the curse power in the crazy people's bodies is very chaotic. I'm afraid it can't be changed by external forces. What should we do, leader? Facing Stuart's question, Luo Ye held his forehead and pondered for a long time before shaking his head, announcing the failure of the rescue operation. The young man, who was at his wit's end, could only give such an answer. At the same time, he felt helpless about this unexpected situation. The students resisted bravely, and the teachers were scared out of their wits. In the end, the students were fine, but the teachers went crazy. The black-haired young man frowned at the awkward situation the investigation team had fallen into. In any case, in the case where most of the scholars had gone crazy, this mission had to be terminated. Besides, after the appearance of the Tyrant sacrifice, this investigation itself could be confirmed to be a scam. As for the future plans. Chapter 479. Parting. This was a word that Luo Ye Akkad wasn't unfamiliar with. Luo Ye had experienced parting with Ka Dia repeatedly since he was a child, so he should be more resistant to such scenes. But this time, the parting with Lillian left him feeling a little uncomfortable, especially when he recalled the blurry memories when he was unconscious. As the first young lady to have intimate contact with Luo Ye, it would be a lie to say that the young man didn't feel anything special. As a man, his sense of responsibility and desire to protect made him unwilling to part with Lillian. But his rationality drove him to act according to his previous plan. After the young lady's many manipulations, the relationship between Luo Ye and Lillian was more or less cleared up. Emperor Luo Ye wouldn't be able to find any clues anymore. And after agreeing to hand Lillian over, no matter what the Austin Empire's attitude was, Luo Ye wouldn't take the initiative to stir up trouble again. Starting from the border of the Austin Empire, Luo Ye toured the towns along the way, heading toward the heart of the largest human country in Xia. He avoided the route between the country of scholars and the border of the Austin Empire. Not only did the meticulous young man avoid the route, but he also changed his appearance. He changed his attire to that of a merchant's employee, which could be said to be quite common in summer. Remember, don't ask. Jinkala is enough. The fertilizer is mixed with Jinkala. 1 bag is worth 2 bags. What are the benefits of Jinkala? I'll give it to whoever gets it right. Recalling the funny things of the past, the black-haired young man shook his head and continued on his way. This year, the Austin Empire was considered to have good weather, so the curse fertilizer was selling well. In autumn, the convoys of various merchants' fleets would be out in full force to resell food and daily necessities between the towns and villages. Of course, during this relaxing time, Luo Ye wasn't just having fun. In fact, the young man had been paying attention to whether there were any pursuers behind him, as well as guarding against possible enemies. But what disappointed the young man was that the enemies didn't take the bait easily. As a matter of fact, apart from a few fools who saw him alone and tried to rob him, Luo Ye didn't encounter any accidents along the way. As the saying went, one had to complete the act. This time, Luo Ye followed Lillian's tail. Not only did he unify the caliber of the team, but he also adopted some strategies for external affairs. The timing of this team's departure was roughly the same as Lillian's. If there was a difference in timing, the first party to arrive at the edge of the misty forest would be waiting in the forest's cabin. Both sides had agreed upon it. But due to the attack of the Tyrant priest, Lillian's mission completed too. That was why Luo Ye was the one waiting. How is it? Is. This. Tis. Tes right. In the agreed-upon wooden cabin, Jellic gazed at the black-haired young man and asked carefully. Upon looking at his expression, Luo Ye couldn't help but reveal a strange expression. Minister, you've underestimated the impact of this incident. The St. Freya Academy's team was attacked by the cultists. This is huge news. Not to mention the mission, even the graduates have probably heard of this explosive news. Well, Minister, although it's a little offensive to say this, not everyone is like you, who has been targeted by the cultists since young. Normally speaking, the cultists wouldn't touch the St. Freya Academy's team. This attack is a once-in-100-years event. Even the higher-ups of the human race who were in a meeting were alerted. After hearing Jellic's explanation, Luo Ye couldn't help but reveal a surprised expression. But as Jellic explained, the young man realized that his common sense was indeed wrong. After understanding this, Luo Ye began to listen in detail to the information collected by Jellic. Only then did he know how big this incident was. The first was Dean Antonio. As a survivor of the Leinster tragedy hundreds of years ago, the old man did not hesitate to take over the responsibility of investigating the incident and called for all countries to eliminate the cultists. As Lillian's home country, the Austin Empire also immediately expressed their stance to investigate the incident of the fallen and condemn the poor performance of the Holy See in this regard. Under this general trend, the resolution to clean up the internal affairs was unanimously passed. Antonio's investigation team had also returned to the academy to investigate the incident. After all, the people who were being questioned were actually the ones who had been rescued. Basically, they had not participated in the battle. The question of who killed the Tyrant priest was brushed aside. If one were to ask in detail, they would not be able to answer at all. However, when he heard that it was an internal inquiry led by Antonio, the young man calmed down. Then it's fine. There was no need for the young man to specifically emphasize. Antonio could handle the matter well. In order to not leave any traces, he might even tamper with the memories of those scholars. And after knowing that there was a big tree to cover for him, Luo Ye completely let go of the possibility of leaking the secret. In the high-level joint meeting of the various countries, everyone looked at this issue from a qualitative point of view. For the students in the academy, the actual losses of this incident were more important. In other words, the casualties of this incident. However, it turned out that this incident wasn't as terrifying on the surface as imagined. Instead, it was a deliberate attempt to downplay the number of casualties. After the investigation team returned to the academy, the students began to panic as various information leaked out. The outside world adopted an intolerant attitude toward the cultists. Within the country of scholars, the first to stand up for this incident was the school of the victims. Many schools jointly requested that this matter be investigated thoroughly. After that, the faculty members made a statement. The mentors who often led teams to carry out missions felt that the current mission mechanism of the academy was not enough to ensure the safety of the students and needed to be strengthened. After a series of statements and speeches, the attack on the investigation team could be said to be known to everyone. And Luo Ya's return was at the climax of this incident. He was completely submerged in this lively background. After returning, Luo Ya first found Paul and asked about the situation after he left. According to Paul, they waited in the military town for 3 days before the team sent by the academy arrived. However, due to the strange state of the group, the team failed to take them away. During this process, Lillian did not wait for the academy's response. Instead, she followed the original plan and went to the front line with the army. Paul and the others arrived at the academy half a month later. After treatment and recuperation, their physical condition was restored to how it was before. At this point, the internal investigation of this incident was over. The next step was to investigate the external culprit. In this regard, Luo Ya agreed with both hands and publicly expressed his views to the school newspaper reporters. In front of the members of the news agency, Luo Ya angrily reprimanded the Tyrant priest who was personally crushed by him, as if he was an innocent passerby with a righteous heart. His superb acting skills made Paul and other insiders call him an expert. After this statement was issued, the last part of this operation was completely completed. Judging from the results of these 3 months, it's not a lot. Looking at the results that could not even fill up a table, Gelt said to Luo Ya with a bitter expression. Obviously, this giant bloodline holder was disgusted by the fake information of various eras in the past few months. Seeing this, Luo Ya nodded and expressed his understanding of the reason why everyone's work efficiency was not high. With this thought in mind, Luo Ya solemnly thanked the tall young man for his efforts. However, he didn't expect that Gelt didn't claim the credit. Instead, he said that reading history books wasn't a job for him. Instead, it was a hobby that made him happy. After thanking and encouraging Gelt, Luo Ya went to see Selena and the others. He found that the 2 young ladies were in good condition, but Stuart needed to rest for a while. It seemed to be the side effect of his eyes. Luo Ya expressed his understanding. After all, the young man's eyes were really useful. Such a powerful detection ability must come with a price. Big brother, you're finally back. Looking at the young man who walked through the door, AI Lizzie said with tears in her eyes. She suddenly threw herself into the young man's arms. Chapter 480. In the room of Blue Hall, the silver-haired girl threw herself into Luo Ya's arms the moment she saw him. The black-haired boy couldn't help but take a step back and look at the girl in his arms in surprise. Luo Ya was about to ask, but AI Lizzie had already begun to complain tearfully. The silver-haired girl buried her head in the boy's chest and complained while choking with sobs. Hearing this, the boy was taken aback for a moment and then revealed a guilty expression as he recalled the promise they made before they went to school. Glancing at the members of the White Rose faction following behind the girl, Luo Ya revealed an expression as if he wanted to say something. The 2 first-year girls were taken aback. Although they were surprised to see AI Lizzie like this, they seemed to be good at reading the situation. After exchanging glances with Luo Ya, they immediately understood and left with their heads lowered. They are your subordinates, right? They have been watching. Now that you are a ring-bearer, aren't you afraid of losing your dignity? From the looks of it, the 2 children seem to be AI Lizzie's trusted aides, so they probably wouldn't speak carelessly. On the other hand, unlike Lillian, the relationship between AI Lizzie and Luo Ya was well known, so there was no need to avoid it. The investigation team's matter this time was very big, which was beneficial for Luo Ya's concealment. Of course, the boy was happy to hear about it, but on the other hand, the girls who stayed behind at the academy weren't feeling well. Hearing those terrifying rumors every day, AI Lizzie must have been very worried these days. Looking at the tears in the silver-haired girl's eyes, Luo Ya's heart ached. After thinking for a moment, he apologized first. Luo Ya said so with a sincere expression, hoping to get the girl's understanding. Unfortunately, things didn't develop smoothly. After hearing Luo Ya's apology, AI Lizzie didn't immediately respond, but instead turned her head to the side. AI Lizzie's cute face was unmoved by Luo Ya's persuasion, and she didn't turn her head to look at him as if she didn't hear anything. Seeing this situation, Luo Ya felt that something was wrong, but there was nothing he could do. "Big brother, have you been sleeping well for the past month?" Hearing AI Lizzie's sudden concern, Luo Ya blinked and hesitated for a moment before answering. He subconsciously felt that something was wrong, and just as Luo Ya predicted, the silver-haired girl spoke again after hearing Luo Ya's answer. "That, every night, I can only rely on the life orb that you left behind to stay awake. I can't sleep because once I close my eyes, I will have nightmares. I want to use some potions, but ordinary potions are useless for this body, even curses." The black-haired boy couldn't help but hug the girl tightly in his arms. But this time, AI Lizzie didn't stop talking. The silver-haired girl struggled and hit Luo Ya's body while saying with a hoarse voice, "Every time, you promised me that you wouldn't do anything dangerous, but every time, you lied to me. Big brother, you are a big liar." After struggling for a while, the silver-haired girl finally said what she wanted to say and couldn't help but cry. Seeing AI Lizzie like this, Luo Ya's heart ached and he completely recognized his mistake. Chapter 481. In the room at night, the black-haired boy looked at AI Lizzie in front of him. His originally tired expression turned into one of shock, and he suddenly sat up. "HM? Did I not express myself well enough? It's bodily fluids, big brother. You treated me like that before, did you forget so quickly?" Thinking about the silver-haired girl's words, the black-haired boy naturally thought of many indescribable things, but then he was slightly stunned. The boy who tasted AI Lizzie's tears before thought so, and his panicked heart calmed down slightly. Although it was bodily fluids, there were many types of fluids with this name. Apart from tears, the most common type of fluid was blood, which could be obtained with a simple cut. "I see, AI Lizzie, I understand your request, but let me say this first, I can only provide blood, saliva, and tears. I can't provide anything else. If you want to choose, you can only choose from these three. It's good that you understand." Of the three options, blood aside, although tears were slightly harder to obtain, it wasn't a big deal. He could just treat it as returning the part of AI Lizzie from before. As for saliva, to be honest, Luo Ya wanted to get rid of it. After all, AI Lizzie used alcohol to alleviate his life's exhaustion last time. After thinking of a way out, Luo Ya looked at the silver-haired girl with a calm smile on his face. But before he could ask, AI Lizzie had already made her choice. "Is that so, HM?" What he chose was actually blood. Could it be the result of his usual ideological education? Thinking about how AI Lizzie's choice seemed to be more distant from him than before, Luo Ya felt a faint sense of loss. But this sense of loss was quickly erased by Luo Ya. Rubbing his forehead, the black-haired boy shook his head slightly to get rid of the strange thoughts in his mind. He raised his head and looked at the girl who walked closer step by step. Under the candlelight, her charm increased by another level. He took a cup and aimed it at his wrist. "Wait, big brother. Although I said that I want blood, I didn't say that I want you to take it, right? I'll decide on the method. I want to do it myself." Faced with AI Lizzie's request, the black-haired youth frowned in confusion. Seeing this, AI Lizzie revealed a pitiful expression and said softly, "Wait, I didn't say no. You can do it yourself if you want. Then it's a deal, big brother. It's simple, use this." "Wait, that's the blood breeds. AI Lizzie, what's going on?" In the world of Shia, it must have cost a lot to change a person's race to such a degree. Not only did the person who changed the race have to pay the price, but the person who was changed also had to bear a large part of it. "Big brother, please don't worry. I didn't become like this because of Juliana, nor is it because of the blood breed. It's a change under my own control." "That's right. In fact, my bloodline seems to have a strange connection with the blood breed, but I'm not a part of them. Or rather, many of the spells that are difficult to use on their side are very simple to me. AI Lizzie and the blood breed actually have some kind of connection? Thinking of this question, Luo Ye frowned in confusion. Seeing this, the girl explained the situation. According to AI Lizzie, she seemed to be able to learn most of the blood breed spells. Her current appearance was also changed through spells. Although these things are a bit unbelievable, Big Brother, that's not the main point. At this time, AI Lizzie was extremely cute. Her narrowed eyes had a unique aura of desire. Her smiling face was full of eagerness as if she was a child who got a new toy. AI Lizzie? It's nothing if it hurts, but Luo Ye hesitated for a moment and didn't say it out loud. On the other side, AI Lizzie stretched out her hand and pulled her collar, revealing a white neck. Her eyes stared into the boy's eyes as her breathing quickened slightly. Yeah. AI Lizzie? So it's like that. Feeling the girl licking him like rubbing alcohol on an injection, the black-haired boy naturally accepted AI Lizzie's words. However, what the boy didn't see was that at this time, beside his cheek, the silver-haired girl's red eyes flashed with a smile of her plan succeeding. As a highly intelligent creature, the blood breeds naturally couldn't hunt everywhere like animals. Not only did the quality of the blood they obtained fluctuate, but it was also unstable. With human intelligence, they chose to have people voluntarily deliver themselves to them, and the method was the blood breed's saliva. Because of this extreme pleasure and small price to pay, in ancient times, many races were willing to serve the blood breeds in exchange for this pleasure. However, as the number of such people increased, the drawbacks of indulging in indulgence began to backfire. The blood breeds gradually turned from the masters to the addicts, and this led to a crisis for the blood breeds. Since then, the blood breeds were strictly prohibited from casually sucking blood. Looking at the boy in front of her, the silver-haired girl pulled up her hair and stuck out her pink little tongue, seriously preparing for the pre-treatment. AI Lizzie, are you still not done? Actually, I'm not that afraid of pain. Perhaps feeling the girl's strange behavior, Luo Ye couldn't help but ask. AI Lizzie estimated the dosage, then nodded, opened her red lips, and two cute little fangs fell towards the boy's neck. Is this Big Brother's blood? At first, the skin being pierced was nothing. Not only was it not painful, it was even a little itchy, but after that, everything started to become strange. Feeling the soft touch in front of his chest, looking at the waist outlined by the dress, the slender legs wrapped in black stockings, and the absolute territory hidden in the skirt fluttering, the black-haired boy suddenly had the urge to tightly hug the girl in front of him. On the other hand, Luo Ye felt his consciousness becoming a little hazy. Wait, something's not right. Big Brother, believe me, this is a normal reaction. That's right, it's the pleasure of sucking blood. Does Big Brother feel good? Luo Ye, who discovered that AI Lizzie's sucking blood had another meaning, slightly widened his eyes. He didn't know how to answer the girl's question. Looking at the boy who was hesitant to answer, AI Lizzie raised the corner of her mouth and softly whispered in Luo Ye's ear. AI Lizzie, if you like it or hate it, of course I like it, but this feeling is a little too strong. The silver-haired girl said so, and she began to blow air into the boy's ear. On the other side, Luo Ye's expression changed. What does it matter? Big Brother has already agreed to let me decide the method of blood collection, and isn't Big Brother very comfortable? Although Juliana has this ability, she doesn't have that kind of feelings for you, and only AI Lizzie can make you feel this kind of joy. Sensing this, the black-haired boy trembled, and he realized that the flame in his body was on the verge of going out of control, so he hurriedly tried to dissuade her. I don't want it to end like this, I want more. Hearing the girl's bold words, Luo Ye couldn't help but turn his head in surprise, only to see the silver-haired, red-eyed girl's face flushed red as if she was drunk. Looking at this AI Lizzie, the boy couldn't help but blink in surprise, but then he recalled Juliana's evaluation after tasting his blood in the past. Seeing that AI Lizzie was obviously different from usual, Luo Ye was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect his blood to be so intoxicating, but this wasn't the main point now. While Luo Ye was in a daze, the silver-haired girl began to pant and kiss the boy's neck, and her hands began to reach down, aiming at Luo Ye's waist. Seeing that she was about to touch his belt, the black-haired boy fiercely bit his lips, and then suddenly stood up with AI Lizzie in his arms. "I'm not drunk, big brother is. Stop dawdling." "What? I don't want." Although AI Lizzie had drunk in the past, but she was far from drunk to this extent. This time, when she was completely drunk, Luo Ye realized that AI Lizzie seemed to be the type that was especially willful when drunk. Is she too sleepy and wants to go to bed? Although AI Lizzie's face was full of drunkenness, there was a mischievous smile on her face. After taking off her shoes, the girl's slender legs wrapped in black stockings didn't fall to the floor. Instead, she raised her legs to hook the boy's sensitive spot. Luo Ye's expression changed when he saw AI Lizzie's intention. His brain quickly heated up, and he understood that he had to give the girl some punishment. Thinking of this, Luo Ye gritted his teeth, picked up the girl, and threw her onto the bed in the room. He pressed down on the girl's waist and slapped the soft flesh under AI Lizzie's skirt. Perhaps it was because she fell onto the bed, or because of the sudden pain, the girl who was slapped became slightly more awake. AI Lizzie screamed and looked at the boy in surprise, but Luo Ye didn't show any mercy. After more than 10 slaps, the silver-haired girl cried out in pain. After the girl's begging for mercy for a long time, Luo Ye finally stopped. AI Lizzie's arched body on the bed finally relaxed, and she fell onto the bed. But to the boy's surprise, the AI Lizzie who fell on the bed didn't seem angry. Instead, her eyes were blurred, and not to mention her cheeks, even her ears were dyed with a layer of red. Do you continue?" Facing the girl's question, Luo Ye was stunned for a moment. The silver-haired girl saw this and her face became even redder. She bit her lips and trembled as she propped up her legs. She looked pitiful, and as if she was expecting something, she asked. The moment he heard this question, Luo Ye's mind went blank. Intense flames rose in his body as if it was about to explode. In the next moment, the black-haired boy stood up and rushed into the bathroom. Chapter 482. In the empty bathroom, Luo Ye got soaked in the bathtub. He stared at the surface of the water to clear his mind, thinking about the benefits of a cold bath. There were many other benefits, but for the current Luo Ye, there was only one benefit, and that was sufficient ice. Only this cold temperature could slightly suppress the evil fire in the youth's heart. Because of this, Luo Ye's ice water was specially made. Half of it was made up of floating ice, but even so, it still made Luo Ye feel impatient and restless, letting his imagination run wild. Recalling how the silver-haired girl seemed to be looking forward to continuing his punishment, Luo Ye felt the fire in his body burning fiercely. On the other hand, it seemed like AI Lizzie's saliva was working. Luo Ye's consciousness was somewhat hazy, and he needed a cold bath to refresh his mind. The silver-haired girl didn't move, which was the best thing for the youth. It also gave Luo Ye some time to think about their relationship. Although AI Lizzie's body didn't have any major problems, she was still underage. Luo Ye definitely wouldn't back down on this point, and it was also one of the main excuses he used to reject the girl. But it had to be said that with the passage of time, this excuse was only valid for a few months. Thinking of this, the youth gently leaned against the edge of the bathtub. For a moment, his mind was in a mess. He remembered that a few years ago, the youth did indeed treat AI Lizzie as family. But he didn't know when it started, but after constant contact, this feeling gradually deteriorated. Thinking of this, Luo Ye felt his brain heating up again. He hurriedly cupped a handful of water and rubbed his cheeks. The black-haired youth breathed a sigh of relief. No matter what, there was only one thing he could do now, and that was to control himself and wait for dawn. The next morning, when Luo Ye dried his body and walked out of the bathroom, the sky outside was already slightly bright. The morning light shone through the gaps in the thick curtains and shone on the sleeping girl's cheeks, making her appear calm and gentle. From the traces under the bed, after Luo Ye left last night, AI Lizzie didn't seem to get out of bed and instead fell asleep. It was obvious how drunk the girl was last night. Muttering to himself, the youth touched the neck that the girl had bitten. He was suddenly curious about what would happen if his blood was sucked after drinking. But this curiosity disappeared when he saw that AI Lizzie was still sleeping soundly. After thinking for a moment, Luoya walked to a chair at the side, crossed his arms, and closed his eyes to rest. This? Bro, big brother. Realizing that the girl had woken up, Luoya rubbed his eyes and stood up to stretch. Then he adjusted his expression and walked to the side of the bed, ready to give the silver-haired girl an ideological education lesson. But he didn't expect that before he even got close, AI Lizzie's face was already flushed red, and then she lifted the blanket and crawled under it. Although last night's incident was planned by AI Lizzie, after sucking Luoya's blood, things started to go awry. In fact, until just now, AI Lizzie remembered how daring she was last night, but because of this, she couldn't bear to see Luoya's face. The girl nestled under the blanket covered her face with both hands, and her mind kept recalling last night's incident. She was so embarrassed that she was about to cry. On the other side, looking at the little bump under the blanket, Luoya didn't know what to say. With a conflicted expression, Luoya didn't know what to do. After thinking for a while, he tentatively approached and asked softly, "Big brother, don't look at me." "That won't do, big brother, don't look at me." Hearing the silver-haired girl emphasized again, Luoya nodded and turned his head slightly to look at the door. The two of them stood like this, one by the bed, the other under the blanket. After a long time, Lizzie finally quietly peeked out and looked at the bed and asked softly, "That, last night I didn't want to do that, but I don't know why your blood made me feel a little, so." Without waiting for Elisa to finish her words, Roja interrupted her and admitted that he didn't know what she was talking about. "Big brother." After brushing aside AI Lizzie's inappropriate behavior last night, the black-haired boy turned his head slightly and looked at the bed. Hearing Luoya's words, the silver-haired girl couldn't help but stop her actions. What's there to be angry about? This was originally an accident, right? Or rather, I was too careless, so don't worry, I won't blame you. Of course, and I've already punished you. Hearing Luoya's words, the silver-haired girl couldn't help but tremble. Her face instantly turned bright red, and even her ears changed color. However, Lizzie couldn't deny these shameful things. "Big brother, you won't laugh at me, right? Why would I use it on someone else? How could I do that? I will only use it on big brother." Luoya's prohibition entered the silver-haired girl's ears, and the content of it naturally made AI Lizzie somewhat dissatisfied. The silver-haired girl said as she crawled out from under the blanket. She didn't expect to see Luoya's smiling face as if his plan succeeded. "Big brother, you said that on purpose, right? Bullying me, using this kind of provocation." After a night, the silver-haired girl's clothes were even more disheveled. Her collar was torn open due to sucking blood last night, and her stockings were also loosened. AI Lizzie had no choice but to sit on the edge of the bed and stretch her slender legs. Her face was slightly red as she pulled them up with her hands. On the other side, Luoya had already brought the girl's shoes over. "Big brother, you don't have to do this. You can't do this to others, you'll only do this to AI Lizzie, so we're even now, right?" The silver-haired girl couldn't help but blush at Luoya's words, but at the same time, her heart flashed with happiness. Luoya's status naturally wasn't suitable for such servant duties, but he was willing to do this to AI Lizzie, which meant that the girl had a very high position in his heart and was cherished by him. Although she had already showered yesterday, she seemed to be sweating because she was drunk. For a girl who liked to be clean, this was unacceptable in front of her sweetheart. Let's forget about what happened last night. After the mission of the Green Rose faction, Luoya had earned enough credits for a year, so he didn't need to run around anymore. As for the attack on the investigation team, Luoya took some time to specifically look for the Dean, Antonio. With the experience of 400 years ago as a precedent, and now with the real case, the world's crackdown on the fallen was suddenly raised to an unprecedented level. On the other hand, Luoya's ancestor, Estrella, had also begun preparations for the awakening. Upon hearing the news brought by the Dean, the black-haired young man blinked in surprise. Antonio's resurrection plan had always been opposed by the Twilight Sages and the hidden families in the Kingdom of Knights. Originally, Luo Ye planned to personally visit them for the upcoming holidays, but he didn't expect to be given the green light this time. In general, there are two reasons. The first and most important reason is the current state of the Savior. Based on the situation of the mutants, the Savior is close to the awakening period that occurs once every few hundred years, and the dream of chaos can no longer suppress him. Teacher Estrella's role in this period is far less than usual, so we can try to separate her from the dream of chaos. Me. I see. With this thought in mind, Luo Ye was filled with gratitude toward Wilhelmina and began to ask about the specific details of separating Estrella and the dream of chaos. Antonio said that he had a certain degree of confidence and had even practiced for years. Should I say that love is a magical thing? 400 years had passed, and even the vast sea could have turned into mulberry fields. However, Antonio's feelings for Estrella didn't seem to have changed. Instead, it seemed to have become even deeper. It could only be said that this taciturn man was indeed a sentimental person, and Luo Ye didn't misjudge him. Dean, before rescuing the ancestor, can you change your appearance a little? Not bad. It shouldn't be difficult for you. You were still a young disciple before, and now you're gray-haired. It's not good for your heart. Antonio understood what Luo Ye meant and smiled helplessly. The young man didn't probe further. After a brief conversation, both of them got busy. Antonio followed the young man's clues to find trouble with the fallen while Luo Ye continued to search for traces of the 6 calamities. When Luo Ye returned to the academy after parting ways with Lillian, it was already the end of summer. Soon after, it would be the fall holidays. Thinking back, Luo Ye spent most of his time in the second academic year on missions and studying. It was a far cry from the bustling first year. But fortunately, these somewhat boring days had come to an end. Just like how young girls would miss their young man after not seeing each other for a long time, Luo Ye missed the 2 young girls even though he didn't say it out loud. Calculating the time, Luo Ye and Miss Angel had been separated for more than half a year and Xia Luo hadn't seen each other for almost a year. As time passed, Luo Ye couldn't suppress his longing for the 2 young girls. But what Luo Ye didn't expect was that things didn't develop smoothly. No matter what, the cultists and mutants had to be eliminated first. Luo Ye agreed with this point. Although Nua Iyer didn't return to the academy, he wrote a letter to Luo Ye to make the young man feel better. On the other hand, Xia Luo's situation made Luo Ye a little puzzled. Seeing this situation, the young man was quite puzzled. After thinking for a long time, he felt that perhaps the long separation made Miss Angel angry, so he specially brought a gift to apologize. But what he didn't expect was the unexpected answer. In the mansion where butterflies fluttered, the black-haired young man couldn't help but fall into silence. A thought began to emerge in his mind. But I understand. Since Xia Luo doesn't have time to see me, then I'll go find her. The black-haired young man said calmly with a smile on his face. The Sorofia family's butler couldn't help but change his expression. Seeing this situation, Luo Ye's heart sank. Ignoring the butler's dissuasion, he immediately turned around and left. Chapter 483. In St. Freya's Academy, the black-haired young man had been frowning ever since he returned from the House of Butterflies of the Wild Rose faction. Seeing him like this, the students in Songji Hall didn't dare to disturb him. For a moment, the usually noisy residents quieted down. After going to the butterfly dance hall, Luo Ye put all his thoughts on the reddish-brown-haired girl. Under worry and contemplation, he couldn't even pretend that nothing happened. Although she was intelligent, her personality was a bit arrogant. Being separated for a long time would definitely make her dissatisfied, so it was normal for her to fall in love with someone else. Outsiders would probably think so. To a certain extent, this saying was true for others, but Luo Ye knew that Xia Luo wouldn't do that. As for falling out because they hadn't seen each other for a long time, although this sounded a bit unlikely, it was different for Luo Ye. Besides, even if it was really a bit awkward, Xia Luo would definitely give Luo Ye a way out instead of just leaving like this. Her character as a good wife and mother made her always worried about Luo Ye's face in front of outsiders. Her experience of living independently since childhood also made Xia Luo good at the ways of the world. It was a kind of tacit understanding, like a real husband and wife. They didn't even need to communicate much, and they would naturally think for each other. This was reflected when the two of them worked together to deal with the cooperation project between Audiobook Territory and Rose. Remember? But it had to be said that although he was worried, there were some problems that Luo Ye needed to consider. That was, at present, the young man didn't have any evidence that Xia Luo might have an accident. Everything was just speculation. Even the decision to leave was Xia Luo's own decision. Then, could it be that Xia Luo deliberately didn't want Luo Ye to know about something? What are you going to do? Remembering that Luo Ye had helped her in their relationship, the blonde girl clenched her fists and said enthusiastically. Hearing this, Gerlach nodded, but he didn't let her go. Indeed, if it was his own business, Luo Ye Dage wouldn't be so nervous. After finishing his thoughts, the young man returned to his senses and looked at Paul and the other two who were waiting by the side with a smile on his face. Seeing such a Luo Ye, Gerlach and the others heaved a sigh of relief. Brother Luo Ye, just say it. Is there anything we can help you with? Yes, this was the decision that Luo Ye made after a long period of consideration. He maintained his intuition at the Butterfly Dance Hall and immediately set off for the Rose Commercial United Nations. As long as there was the slightest possibility that something might happen to Xia Luo, Luo Ye wouldn't just wait, even if it meant any losses. Although the second school year had come to an end, Luo Ye still had a lot of things to do, including the reorganization and training of the entire faction. On the other hand, enhancing the faction members' ability in group battles was also to prepare for the possible battlefield in the future. Luo Ye didn't want his former faction members to be easily buried in the battlefield, and judging from the facilities, the Rose faction with the Secret Realm had the greatest advantage. Originally, Luo Ye wanted to use the last few days of the semester to train, but now he could only leave these important tasks to Paul and the others. After briefing them about the tasks, the young man went out again and headed toward the Rose faction's base where AI Lizzie was. The Rose faction's base was by the lake, and it was particularly lively in the hot summer. AI Lizzie's room was a huge lakeside villa. Every morning when the lake was filled with mist, it was like a fairyland. Coupled with AI Lizzie's stunning beauty, it even made people think that they had mistakenly entered the kingdom of fairies. At the dining table, the silver-haired girl thought of going home alone for more than a month, and her beautiful face couldn't help but show reluctance. Seeing this situation, Luo Ye had no choice but to take the initiative to please her. He personally cut the food into small pieces and pushed it in front of the girl. I understand, I already know what kind of person my brother is, but that guy actually left without saying goodbye. It's really strange. Although because of Luo Ye, AI Lizzie often quarreled with this young lady next door, and the frequency was even more frequent than Nua Iyer, but it had to be said that in the process of growing up, Xia Luo was the female peer she came into contact with the most. And from the perspective of the Akat family, Xia Luo was the central figure who promoted the cooperation between the two families. She was also the main person in charge of the cooperation project. Her safety would definitely affect the development of the entire Akat territory, and it was also related to the revival of the territory, so they couldn't be careless. Well, but if there are no problems over there, please come back quickly to accompany me. I still have a lot of things to do with you during the holidays. For Luo Ye and AI Lizzie, the next few years of limited holidays were probably their last relaxing time. In the future, if the war with the aliens entered a stalemate, whether it was Luo Ye or AI Lizzie, as high-grade transcendents, they would probably participate in the war. In that case, it would be difficult to live a peaceful life. At dawn the next day, the black-haired young man bid farewell to Elisa and headed to the Akat family's garrison near the academy. Under the protection of the Heresy army, the young man rushed towards Ratchet's direction as fast as he could. The black-haired boy chased after the brown-haired young lady. On the other side, on the road to the Rose Business United Nations, a convoy of more than 10 carriages was traveling day and night under the protection of many guards. It was the jewel necklace convoy that belonged to the young lady of the Sorofia family. However, such a convoy was completely different from the usual elegant and leisurely carriage. The coachmen were tired, but they insisted on rushing. The accompanying guards were slightly better, but the summer heat still made them sweat profusely. Go Lacey, don't be so nervous. The current situation is far from as bad as you think. On the bed in the bedroom, Xia Luo in white pajamas was lying in the middle of the spacious princess bed. She smiled at the maid who was full of anxiety. Seeing such a girl, Go Lacey couldn't help but worry. He quickly walked to the bed to check on the girl's situation. The beauty inherited from the ancient elves didn't change, and the noble and independent temperament didn't change. However, at this time, Xia Luo's face was very pale, and her body looked exceptionally weak. A faint aura of death wrapped around her exquisite body, giving the girl an illusory beauty. Bruce Sorofia, the current president of the Rose Business United Nations, had been known to the world as the manager of Rose for decades. However, what others didn't know was that this ruler who seemed to be in the prime of his life was actually critically ill a few years ago. Even now, he was still suffering from a strange illness. Miss, how are you feeling now? Please tell me the truth about your body's condition. After sleeping for a while, I feel a little better, but my body still doesn't have much strength. There is also a strange aura of death in my curse power. These don't seem to have any effect. These things are useless, which means that the possibility of Miss being attacked by external forces is very small. Xia Luo said and looked up at the starry ceiling. She shook her head and denied the possibility that the abnormalities in her body were caused by external forces. The red-haired girl thought as she looked at her own body. As the saying goes, Rome wasn't built in a day. Xia Luo's current condition wasn't caused in a day. In fact, not long after she separated from Luo Ye last year, the girl felt a wave of discomfort. However, at that time, Xia Luo didn't pay much attention to it. The clothes I made haven't been sent out yet. Miss, if you want to see young Master Luo Ye, how about we go directly to Akat Hill? Although Rose's medical treatment is very complete, the oil lamp that alleviated Master's symptoms was made by young Master Luo Ye. But, Miss, the red-haired girl said until here. She couldn't help but slightly clench her hand that was stroking her clothes. Go Lacey fell into silence. For a moment, she didn't know how to persuade her. If she told the black-haired boy about her illness, with Luo Ye's personality, he would definitely come to visit Xia Luo. So, she might as well hide it. This was the only way for the girl. However, Go Lacey didn't agree. In her opinion, Luo Ye was the girl's hope. I want to see him. Of course, I want to see him. That's without a doubt, but I want to protect him. I don't want him to worry, the girl said and stroked the clothes in her hand. Go Lacey stopped talking. The spacious room was silent for a moment. Unfortunately, thousands of miles away, a group of people didn't act according to Xia Luo's wishes. Under the starry night, the black-haired boy traveled day and night, rapidly approaching the girl. Chapter 484. On a summer night, the stars were shining in the dark wilderness. On the road to the Rose Commercial United Nations, the black-haired boy was resting on the side. Not far from him, a group of armored guards were setting up tents. Although they set off 2 days earlier than Luo Ye and others, Xia Luo rode in a carriage, while Luo Ye and others rode in a cavalry. Normally, they should catch up with Sorofia's family around the morning of the 3rd day, but the fact was that they didn't see anyone until the evening. That was Xia Luo and others, just like Luo Ye and others, were also rushing day and night. At the end of the joint conference, unlike the overwrought theocracy, the financially abundant Rose didn't have any urgent matters at all. Normally, they didn't need to rush like this at all, so the biggest possibility was that they were hiding from something. If it wasn't the enemy's pursuit, then what else was worthy of Xia Luo to make such a big fuss? Could it be, they are hiding from me? Why are they hiding from me? Even if there is something wrong with the relationship between two people, escaping can't solve the problem, right? They left without saying goodbye before. Is there something that they don't want to tell me? In any case, after 3 days of chasing, Luo Ye and others couldn't move forward anymore. The boy also seized the short time to seriously think about the clues. After Akate Territory and Ratchet resumed their previous relationship, and after frequent business cooperation, the military, represented by Old Man Eugene, had always been a hardcore supporter of the two. It was hard to imagine what kind of chaos Bruce and the military would cause in the country. Wait a minute. Bruce. Luoya was fortunate to see Bruce's immortal body a few years ago. Since most of the items in the system were unique, Luoya didn't find anything similar to the lamp after that. Fortunately, even after the lamp oil was exhausted, the effect of the curse vessel didn't completely disappear. Thinking of this possibility, Luoya felt a little better. Although it wasn't good to say this, as long as it wasn't Xia Luo, Luoya wouldn't be so anxious. Even if Bruce's illness would also bring a storm to the Akkad territory. In the jewel necklace caravan, the black-haired maid looked at the young girl who had fallen ill after waking up in the morning with a sorrowful expression. In front of her, Xia Luo, who had just gotten better yesterday, fell ill again. Eldest miss, no matter what, I have to tell Luoya about this matter. Please forgive me. Young miss, although I am a maid, I am also your bodyguard. One of my duties is to ensure your safety. I believe that the current situation is quite unfavorable, so we must seek help from our allies, which is the Akkad family. Please don't continue to be stubborn. Grace, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. Things aren't as serious as you think. This illness will worsen at night, and in the morning, it will make people look worse than they actually are. Father is like this. You should be clear about this. Looking at the resolute face of the maid, the reddish-brown-haired girl pondered for a moment before softly persuading her. She wanted to dispel Grace's idea, but it was useless in front of the maid who had been by Charlotte's side since she was young. As Grace said, Xia Luo's illness was only a moment of discomfort at the beginning. It lasted for only a few seconds, and the frequency was about once every half a month. It even made people think that it was an illusion caused by fatigue and neurasthenia. However, as time passed, not only the frequency became once every few days, but the duration also began to gradually increase. Chapter 485. In the reception room, the black-haired youth looked at Xia Luo in front of him and asked the question with a flat expression. His golden pupils stared closely at the girl's eyes. When she heard Luoya's question, the reddish-brown-haired young lady's body stiffened unnaturally for a moment. Gu Lacey was an advanced source rank 3 transcended. She specialized in close combat and had an excellent compatibility with Xia Luo, who was proficient in gem curse. With the black-haired maid by Xia Luo's side, the girl's safety level would be qualitatively improved. And from another point of view, it was necessary to have a trusted aide by your side during the long journey. Is there anything more important than your safety on this journey in the wild? Zhang Lixing asked. Don't tell me that during this period she won't be by your side? Hearing Luoya's rhetorical question, the reddish-brown-haired girl was speechless for a moment. The youth's question seemed normal, but if Xia Luo wanted to deny it, it was equivalent to belittling Gu Lacey's professionalism as a maid and guard. It was also an insult to her persistence. Even if it was to hide her illness, Xia Luo couldn't do it. Gu Lacey went to rest? Is that so? But in that case, what's with this cup of tea? This smell is from her, right? Not good, my dear is a bit too sensitive. She left before you came in. Gu Lacey was a little dizzy, so it took so long. The youth nodded noncommittally to Xia Luo's answer. He carefully observed the girl's situation and gradually frowned. Seeing Luoya's expression, Xia Luo's heart couldn't help but jump. However, before the girl could change the topic, Luoya asked again. Of course, although I'm a little tired, my body is very healthy. The black-haired boy's question echoed in the room. The girl, who was somewhat prepared, pretended that nothing had happened and asked a question back. She reached for the teacup in front of the table. However, to the girl's surprise, Luoya's expression suddenly sank after hearing this answer that she thought was flawless. Seeing the rare serious expression on Luoya's face, Xia Luo's heart was flustered, but she couldn't figure it out. She could only cast an inquiring look at the youth, but Luoya, who was opposite her, didn't say anything. Xia Luo, do you think I understand you? In response to Luoya's strange question, Xia Luo seemed a little confused. Her emerald eyes stared at the young man in front of her as she recalled the days they spent together. After a moment of hesitation, she nodded. Nothing, I just wanted to hear your answer, because I was wondering if my feelings for you had been underestimated. When the red-haired girl heard the youth's words, a slightly puzzled expression appeared on her face. Luo Ye nodded, looked at Xia Luot, and said softly, "For example, you like to drink mixed flower tea, the water temperature is about 70 degrees, and your favorite food is strawberry-flavored macarons. You wake up early in the morning, and you can't sleep at night if you don't read some documents. People often don't put in as much effort as imagined when interacting with each other, especially for an independent girl like Xia Luot. Even Bruce, as her biological father, didn't care much about her." Chapter 486. What did Gu Lacey usually do? Luo Ye used to think he understood this very well. When he first met Xia Luot, the relationship between the young man and the girl was not as harmonious as it was now. Luo Ye put in a lot of effort to take care of this potential customer, including making good tea for the girl every morning and thinking of food to suit her taste. Previously, Luo Ye took care of her from the perspective of a guest and a friend, but now he was the closest person to the girl, and what he needed to do was far more than simply pouring tea. Hearing the black-haired maid's answer with a smile, the black-haired young man asked. He looked at Gu Lacey and didn't think that this was the job of a maid. The black-haired young man was puzzled, but Gu Lacey didn't waver at all in response to Luo Ye's question because this was indeed what she needed to do every day, but it was only limited to this period of time. She didn't need to do anything to achieve the goal of intimate contact between the two, which was why she decisively chose to collapse at that time. It's already to this extent? Realizing that his goal had been achieved, Gu Lacey stopped talking after a few words and suggested that the young man go to Xia Luot's side first. Luo Ye nodded, said some words of blessing and left. Luo Ye naturally did his best to take care of Xia Luot, but while maintaining the girl's life, Luo Ye also had more important things to do, and that was to find out the reason for the girl's current cursed illness. Just like what the young man said to dispel Xia Luot's worries, Bruce had lived with Xia Luot for many years, so why did the girl only get sick recently? Whether it was from the human body's immune system or supernatural power, wasn't Xia Luot, who was weak as a child, most likely to get sick? After thinking about it, Luo Ye felt that it was strange, but he didn't have any clues. In desperation, he decided to take care of Xia Luot first. However, he didn't expect to receive a huge challenge as soon as he took office. More than 10 minutes later, in Xia Luot's room, the black-haired young man looked at the girl in front of him with a puzzled expression. On the sofa in front of him, the reddish-brown-haired girl was holding a teacup with a blushing face and was silent. Luo Ye caught up with Xia Luot's convoy this morning. After a period of waiting and talking, it was already morning. Normally, Xia Luot would have arranged this time, but the girl seemed to be hesitating about something. This morning, Xia Luot wasn't in a good state. When she knew that Luo Ye had caught up with her, she was arguing with Gu Lacey and didn't even get out of bed. Because she was afraid that Luo Ye would find out, Xia Luot had been putting on makeup and changing clothes with the help of the maids while the young man waited. In fact, she hadn't even eaten breakfast until now. And that was to take a bath. Looking at the puzzled Luo Ye in front of her, the reddish-brown-haired girl couldn't help but lower her eyes and look at her reflection in the teacup silently. But it was summer now. If she didn't take a bath, although it was unlikely, what if there was a smell? The sound of knocking on the door broke the awkward silence between the two, making the reddish-brown-haired girl feel slightly relieved. Luo Ye went to check, but to the girl's surprise, it wasn't some trivial report from outside the door, but the black-haired maid's full support. Schedule? Great, I don't know what to do. Chapter 487. In the bathroom, the black-haired young man looked at the girl with her back facing him. His golden pupils suddenly contracted. After asking the question, the reddish-brown-haired young lady also fell into silence. Putting everything else aside, the Austin Empire represented by Lillian, who stepped onto the ladder of adulthood with Luo Ye, had always been Luo Chet's sworn enemy. Xia Luot, the young lady of Sorofia, and the Austin Empire's princess were also known to be at odds with each other. If Xia Luot knew about this, it was almost impossible for her not to be angry. Wait, as expected, forget it, there's no need to answer. Sorry, I don't mean to control you. We don't have any actual relationship, This kind of questioning is making you uncomfortable. Hearing Xia Luo's words, the black-haired young man hurriedly shook his head to deny it. Although Xia Luo and him did not have any official relationship, the feelings between the two were very real. In Luo Ye's eyes, Xia Luo was already someone he would never leave. Even if he was controlled a little, Luo Ye would not mind. Even if I act like the mistress of the house? Recalling the girl's shares in the financial report of his family, the black-haired young man helplessly raised the corner of his mouth. Xia Luo was stunned for a moment, but after blinking her eyes, she also laughed. Idiot, it's because it's you that I'm open. Hearing Luo Ye's soft words, Xia Luo's body couldn't help but tremble. Then, she lowered her head slightly and tightened her arms a little. Suddenly, a mixture of shyness and warmth rose in her heart. After experiencing the dangers of the historical fragment together, their relationship quickly became closer. Luo Ye began to gradually give up his authority to the reddish-brown-haired young lady. Xia Luo originally thought that Luo Ye trusted his ally Luo Chet because of various things, but it seemed that was not the case. Well, actually, it's mainly to prevent father from going back on his words. Wait, why did you turn around? Looking at the boy who looked away awkwardly, the reddish-brown-haired girl confirmed her guess. For a moment, she only felt a warm current surging in her heart, and she was even a little speechless. Faced with this situation, Xia Luo had no choice but to plead with Ka Dia face to face, hoping that she would be allowed to contact Luo Ye. After many efforts, the Marquis finally agreed not to interfere in the matter between the two. Although father looks like he doesn't care about anything, that's not the case. The Akot family's military expenditure is very high, and father values this part very much. After all, the main reason why Ka Dia objected to Xia Luo and Luo Ye being together was that the Akot family wasn't short of money. Although their economy was poor, they were very independent and had little contact with the outside world. If this situation continued, then Ka Dia could change his mind at any time. My dear, aren't you afraid that father will be angry? Also, what if I betray you? My dear. Chapter 488. A high-grade extraordinaire's perception of danger was similar to intuition. Therefore, danger could appear without any warning, and it could also disappear without any reason. The short period of time was usually the chance for them to notice the signs of danger, but unfortunately, most of them were fleeting. Xia Luo. Dear, what's wrong? Looking at the brown-haired girl who was a little worried but didn't show any abnormalities, the black-haired boy hesitated for a moment before shaking his head, and then asked, No, her condition has been good since I saw you. The boy thought for a moment before nodding. Looking at the girl who didn't show any abnormalities, he didn't mention his vague sixth sense. After shaking his head with a smile, Luo Ye covered the girl with the blanket again. The brown-haired girl's emerald eyes flashed with a little doubt, but she blinked and didn't ask any questions. Although Luo Ye and Xia Luo seemed to have a carefree morning because of their reunion, in fact, the boy didn't forget the important thing in his heart, which was to observe Xia Luo's condition. During this period of time, Luo Ye didn't feel that the girl was suffering from any illness, or rather, it was more like she had just recovered from a serious illness. However, Luo Ye naturally felt that this was impossible. Luo Ye had already applied for leave before he caught up with the girl, so his second year at St. Freya Academy had ended and he didn't need to return to school. Moreover, Rochet and Akate Hill were neighbors, and there was no urgent matter in the family. Before the girl recovered from her illness, the black-haired boy could be together with Xia Luo. For a few days, Luo Ye and the brown-haired girl could be said to be inseparable. The black-haired boy worried about Xia Luo, and under such care, Xia Luo's body began to recover. Seeing Xia Luo like this, the maids in the gem necklace sighed in their hearts. Gu Lacey was also very excited. The illness that couldn't be cured for more than a year suddenly improved after Luo Ye's arrival. This situation could be described as a miracle. Looking at the two's loving appearance, Gu Lacey bit her handkerchief and kept wiping her tears. She was overjoyed that Xia Luo didn't follow in the footsteps of the Sorofia family's female love. On the other side, the brown-haired girl was also surprised at her body's condition. Although it looks like this, unfortunately, I didn't do anything. If that's the case, then you've recovered. Chapter 489. It was early autumn, and the temperature had yet to drop. The scenery on both sides of the road had already changed. In the jewel necklace convoy, a reddish-brown-haired girl couldn't help but sigh as she looked out the window at the trees whose leaves had begun to turn yellow. That was the previous day and night of rushing on the road. Perhaps it was just as the saying went, happy times always pass too quickly. At least in Charlotte's eyes, the time she spent with the young man every day seemed to have been accelerated. Even the boring work seemed to have passed in the blink of an eye. Is this not wanting to end the journey so quickly? Although Luoya was taking care of the girl, in fact, the past half a month had been quite comfortable even in her eyes. However, unlike Xiaoluo, Luoya's comfort didn't come from escaping from the complicated affairs of the world, but rather from peace. To some extent, Luoya could be considered the king of resistance. After all, the pressure of having someone constantly watching your life was unbearable for most people, not to mention fighting with an unknown enemy. This required an extremely strong psychological quality because the opponent's methods were likely to be beyond one's expectations. The Tyrant priest was the best example of this. Remember in a second. The black-haired boy, who was a little surprised, sighed slightly and then pulled his attention back to the girl. After thinking for a moment, the boy felt that it was necessary to let Xiaoluo use the last time of the journey to relax. Dear, what did you say? How suspicious. Shia, due to the good living standards and natural conditions, most people yearned for big cities and a bustling and lively life. They didn't have much interest in natural scenery, but occasionally, the beauty of nature would be recognized by people, and Delhi's love forest was one of them. Marat was the name of the goddess in charge of love in ancient legends. The tree that was named after her was often called the Tree of Love, which was also the origin of the forest's name. The reason for this name was naturally because of the color of the leaves. As a famous scenic spot, Delhi in autumn was a sacred place for romantic dates and also a good place for confessions. The fiery red mountains were like dancing flames when the wind blew, as if it could ignite the flame of love in people's hearts. When such a scene fell into the eyes of a young girl in love, even Xiaoluo couldn't help but feel excited. Taking Xiaoluo out once before arriving at the destination was a request that Luoya had made to Gulaisi and the others. It was also a way for the young man to relieve the unwillingness in Xiaoluo's heart. When his body isn't in good condition, looking at some natural scenery may help his body and soul. This was the original intention of Roha's plan. After hearing the youth's idea, Grace and the others immediately told the youth that they were in front of this tourist holy land. And judging from the current situation, bringing the girl to this area seemed to be quite effective. The elven lady asked softly as she stared at the rose-colored landscape before her. The black-haired boy replied calmly, "Of course, who do you think I am?" Chapter 490. Rose's military had always had a close relationship with Achaite territory. For many years, they had firmly supported Xiaoluo as the successor of Rose. It could be said that they were staunch allies. Therefore, when Luoya arrived as the acting lord of Achaite territory, he was naturally welcomed by them. Rose was a large country with unimaginable financial resources. They had a first-class medical team and countless capable people. As the eldest daughter of the Sorofia family, Xiaoluo would definitely receive perfect treatment after returning to her country. Not to mention, her illness was similar to Bruce's curse. Rose had more medical experience, so Luoya was relatively relieved that night. After more than 10 days, although the accumulated fatigue didn't affect his combat effectiveness, it was time to rest. The central area of Rose was undoubtedly a place to sleep peacefully. Luoya-sama. I'm Gulaisi, I have an urgent matter to inform you. Luoya-sama. Miss Maid brought Luoya an incredible news in the dark before dawn. Xiaoluo was ill. When Luoya heard this, he couldn't accept it, but the anxious and sad expression on the maid's face told him that this was the reality. From the words of Gulaisi, Luoya roughly understood what happened. According to Miss Maid, Xia Luo's condition wasn't bad when she went to check her body after parting with Luo Ye in the evening. After the treatment, the medical team of the Sorofia family thought that although the eldest daughter's body was weak, there was nothing serious. After the joint meeting, Bruce, as the president of the Rose Commercial United Nations, stayed in the front line and hadn't returned yet. Xia Luo was temporarily in charge of domestic affairs. It could be said that the situation was somewhat similar to Luo Ye's previous acting lord. In this case, it was almost impossible to rest. After that, it was the routine dinner. Fortunately, the eldest daughter returned to Rose. The medical team was fully prepared. If it was during the journey, it is likely that Gu Lacey's body trembled as she recounted the events of the previous night. Opposite her, the black-haired young man fell into silence as he pondered over something with a gloomy expression. Xia Luo's face was as pale as paper, and her consciousness was in a coma. A faint aura of immortality floated around her, and her vitality was visibly decreasing. If the girl yesterday was a blooming flower nourished by love, then the sleeping Xia Luo now was like a falling cherry blossom that could wither at any moment. Lord Luo Ye, young mistress is safe for now. You can come closer. They had finally reunited after a long time, and their relationship had improved. Just as the two of them were about to have a happy ending like a fairy tale, Xia Luo suddenly fell ill. This situation was unacceptable to the maids, and also unbearable to Luo Ye. In Luo Ye's eyes, the reddish-brown-haired girl was like a fragile piece of glass that could shatter and disappear at any time. This made Luo Ye feel as if a knife was twisting in his heart. Luo Ye? Xia Luo's sudden awakening made everyone in Rose excited. The medical team and clerics quickly used spells to confirm the girl's condition, and the maids immediately busied themselves. On the sickbed, looking at the concerned Luo Ye, Xia Luo responded with a faint smile. Why are you apologizing now? It's not like you wanted to fall ill. In the past, regardless of whether it was facing a disaster-like monster or an expert that far exceeded his level, Luo Ye had never shown such panic and even fear. As someone who made the young man so uneasy, how could Xia Luo's heart not be moved? Your current situation is not fine at all. Wait, don't tell me. During the journey, Xia Luo's condition stopped when Luo Ye caught up with them. After that, the young man and girl were inseparable, and Xia Luo did not show any obvious abnormalities. But this time, after only one night, the reddish-brown-haired girl fell ill. That's right, there was a reason why Gu Lacey did not stay by Xia Luo's side this morning and went to find Luo Ye personally. That was because the maid felt that Luo Ye was somehow related to Xia Luo's condition. Thinking of this, the young man and girl fell silent. Luo Ye turned to look at Gu Lacey, and the black-haired maid immediately responded with a look and stepped forward to report Xia Luo's condition before and after Luo Ye's arrival. It's actually true. Xia Luo, did you have any abnormalities last night? Nightmares? Facing Luo Ye's question, the reddish-brown-haired girl held her forehead and answered. The young man nodded, and after thinking for a moment, he bent down and stroked the girl's cheek with a comforting smile. Dear, how could it be? But, dear, you still have your own work, right? About Rosette Dawn's missions, those are very important, right? Really, dear, you're exaggerating. No matter what, my life can't be compared to the human world, right? Hee, you're talking like I'm a woman who brings disaster to the country. The black-haired young man gently kissed the girl's cheek, and the elf girl's face suddenly turned red, and she was somewhat at a loss. Seeing this, Luo Ye smiled, and then said softly but firmly, Dear. When he was chatting with the girl before, although Luo Ye's tone was relaxed, in fact, he was already extremely worried. But the young man knew that at times like this, he had to be positive and optimistic, so that he could bring Xia Luo confidence. Looking at the girl who fell asleep again, Luo Ye's heart ached, but fortunately, after thinking about Xia Luo's situation, Luo Ye had some ideas. The attack targeted the girl because of her individual value, which was the Highland Elf's atavistic bloodline, and once this was the focus, combined with the fact that she would not get sick when she was with Luo Ye, there was only one possible choice. Thinking about the ancient monsters in his mind, The black-haired young man's golden pupils gradually lit up, flickering with killing intent like candlelight. Chapter 491. In Shia, the name Gem Curse was a general term. It was a curse cast by the soldiers of the Rose Commercial United Nations with good equipment. But in fact, it was just a generic term for Gem Curse. That's right, the only real users of Gem Curse were the descendants of the ancient Sophia dynasty, which was the current ruler of Rose, the Sophia family. Like many curses of other factions, Gem Curse required some medium to activate. However, unlike other factions, the catalyst for Gem Curse was often beautiful and expensive gems or minerals. In short, it was the currency and hard currency of human society. The Highland Elves, who had the wealth perception and were proficient in astrology and divination, did not lack these earthly treasures. In the ancient times when mythical creatures existed, precious metals were actually not the most expensive things. Compared to the rewards of the gods, the corpses of powerful monsters were more valuable. Unfortunately, countless years later, the Highland Elves were buried in the long river of history. As the descendants of the Sophia family, the Gem Curse had long lost the glory of their ancestors. In fact, even in the family, there was only one person who could truly master Gem Curse, and that was Xia Luot, who had the bloodline of the atavistic bloodline. After Xia Luot fell asleep, the black-haired boy immediately realized that something was wrong. He ordered Golacy and the others to collect information and conduct an investigation. The goal was to find the cause of Xia Luot's illness. Remember, not leaving was just a delaying tactic. If he wanted to solve the problem, he had to find the source of the girl's illness. After reading various records of the Sophia family, some speculations gradually formed in the boy's mind. If Xia Luot's illness was caused by a curse, then the principle of the curse must be followed. Under normal circumstances, the girl, who was affected by the curse, should not be more ill than Brosnan, who was the source of the curse. However, the truth was the opposite. Could it be because Xia Luot's level isn't high enough? Hearing Golacy's words, the black-haired youth couldn't help but stare blankly. Only now did he know that in this year, although the red-haired girl wasn't in front of Luoya, as one of the chosen ones of this world, the speed of her strength didn't slow down at all. Especially before the joint conference of the various countries, in order to not lose momentum, Xia Luot deliberately chose to advance in advance and succeeded. Xia Luot hadn't told Luoya about her advancement to the 3rd level of the source grade. She probably didn't want to flaunt her talent in front of him and was worried about pressuring him. However, after being together for so long, Luoya hadn't sensed the aura of the 3rd level of the source grade. This meant that Xia Luot's illness was more serious than he thought. In conclusion, Luoya felt that Xia Luot's situation was related to the 6 disasters. The red-haired girl didn't care about this period of time, but in Luoya's view, this was a symbol of time. It was also during this period of time that the hidden fog had begun to move towards Tucker Fortress and created a tragedy that shocked the entire human world. More than 700 years ago, Xia Luot's ancestor, Isha Bela Sophia, used the Golden Soul to seal the frozen earth creator. After obtaining the power of the crown stone, Luoya relied on the red-haired girl's power to survive several serious side effects. Judging from all these signs, the reason why the Highland Elves were able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the angels and dragons in ancient times and had such a high status was probably not only because of their strength, but also because they were able to suppress the 6 calamities. As for why they had this ability, if this was the case, then it was normal for the Sophia family's gem curse to suppress the 6 disasters. The reason why Xia Luot's curse was far more powerful than Bruce's could also be explained. Because compared to Bruce, Xia Luot, whose strength was comparable to a true Highland elf, was the one who posed the greatest threat to the 6 disasters. Master Andrew, this was the person that Luoya would meet every time he came to Luoya. The reason was very simple. To some extent, Andrew had helped Luoya a lot. Thanks to him, Luoya experienced the cruel Azura field at that time. But it had to be said that from an objective point of view, Andrew did find a way to cure Luoya. In fact, Andrew was also Bruce's personal doctor, so he knew the details of the curse that Bruce was infected with during his adventure. Chapter 492. Early in the morning, in the bedroom before the sun rose, the black-haired young man looked at the letter in his hand. His golden pupils constricted abruptly. His originally calm face was as gloomy as the sky outside the window. Luo Ye naturally agreed to this point and even wanted to go there personally. But considering Xia Luo's safety, he dismissed the idea. So after weighing the pros and cons, Luo Ye chose to accompany the young lady and wait for the news. But what he didn't expect was that Master Andrew, who had been preparing for years, didn't have a smooth sailing. Instead, he brought him extremely bad news. According to the contents of the letter, after Andrew and the others used a spatial spell to teleport, they traveled through the night to the underground ruins that they had explored in the past. However, after 2 days of exploration, Andrew and the others arrived at the site of the incident, only to find that the entire ruins had been severely damaged. It had already been reduced to ruins. As the place where Bruce met his demise, this underground ruin that was discovered decades ago wasn't a popular place for adventurers to explore. Therefore, it was easily controlled by Luo Ye's side and they sent specialized personnel to monitor it. But according to the records, it was peaceful in the past few months and there were no signs of outsiders entering at all. The ruins were destroyed. This was beyond the young man's expectation. But before Luo Ye could think about it carefully, he suddenly heard the young lady's voice behind him. 1 second, remember. At this moment, on the bed, the brown-haired young lady supported herself with her arms, rubbing her sleepy eyes and looking for the young man who was supposed to be by her side. Because of the torment of her illness, Xia Luo's face was a little pale and her body was a little thinner. Her fitted pajamas were slightly loose, revealing a large part of her chest and shoulders. The young lady who had just woken up and was looking for Luo Ye softly was unusually cute, just like a sleeping beauty who had just woken up and was calling for her knight. Upon hearing such a call, the black-haired young man didn't hesitate and immediately returned to the young lady's side after handling the letter. Yes, I'm here. The sky isn't bright yet. Sleep for a while more. Looking at the young man who had rushed to her side, the hazy girl seemed to be relieved. She grabbed Luo Ye's sleeve and nodded lightly before lying down again. Then, she moved her body slightly into the young man's embrace. On the other side, the black-haired young man looked at the beauty who had fallen into a deep sleep again. He reached out his hand and gently brushed away the hair on the girl's face. Because of her Highland elf bloodline, Xia Luo had been managing the family's affairs since she was a child. She had gone through many trials and tribulations and was very independent. Although she was in love with Luo Ye, she didn't like to cause trouble for him. She even wanted to hide the curse from him. The black-haired young man was naturally happy to see such a situation. Or rather, it was Luo Ye's dream to become the pillar of support in the heart of a strong young lady. However, after reading this morning's letter, Luo Ye's heart was in a mess. On the other hand, after reading the letter, the most likely but also the most unacceptable conjecture gradually emerged in the young man's heart. That was the source of Xia Luo's curse, which was one of the 6 calamities. And this ancient monster had escaped after being activated. Looking at the sleeping girl, Luo Ye's expression became unprecedentedly serious. If the curse came from one of the 6 calamities, then it was the worst news for Luo Ye and the others. Because so far, humans didn't have any means to accurately detect these terrifying monsters. This was a popular proverb in Shiya, which was often in times of war. It was also the voice of the people in this era. In the distant eastern front line, after several probing confrontations, the human alliance and the mutated race had begun their official battle. Small-scale encounters no longer occurred, and large-scale positional warfare gradually became the main theme. Among the fortresses that were heavily defended by several major countries, there was a Tucker fortress whose combat strength was far lower than any other time in history. It was the Tucker fortress that was rebuilt after being devoured by the hidden fog. Although it had barely returned to its original size after more than a year of emergency repairs, it was still only strong on the outside but weak on the inside. Due to this strategic gap, the entire human fortress defense network had a serious flaw. Once the mutated race launched a large-scale attack, it was likely to be broken through. The enemy would directly invade the human world, and the frontline soldiers who were cut off from support would only have a dead end. There was no doubt that this was a courageous attempt. Probably only the veterans who survived the Fourth War of the mutated race nearly 100 years ago dared to make such a decision. But while sighing at the courage of the older generation, a new problem arose. Because of the initiative to attack, the difficulty of the logistics work suddenly skyrocketed. Xia Luo, it's about time. Looking at the pale and tired girl sleeping, Luo Ye fell into silence for a while. He looked at Xia Luo with a distressed expression, but he didn't dare to wake her up. Although these documents are only about logistics, it is also related to the frontline battle. It may even affect the lives of some soldiers. I must finish it as soon as possible. Dear, please. Every time he saw Xia Luo's pleading eyes, Luo Ye would involuntarily agree to the girl's request. But the young man knew that such high-intensity work was not something a patient could afford, especially for Xia Luo. It was obvious that the effect of the curse was still being maintained. It was constantly wearing down Xia Luo's life force. However, Luo Chai didn't have any good solutions. He could only suppress it with the golden soul. By now, Luo Ye was almost certain that the curse on Xia Luo's body came from one of the 6 disasters. But unlike the fog of concealment that shook the world, this ancient monster was in a state of hibernation before, so it wasn't very lethal. The whereabouts of the 6 disasters were almost impossible to find, and if the source couldn't be found, it meant that the curse on the girl's body was almost impossible to remove, and recovery was naturally far away. I'm sorry, I fell asleep again. But, dear, wait. Seeing Xia Luo like this, Luo Ye couldn't help but secretly sigh in relief. He walked toward the bedroom. Listening to the young man's heartbeat, Xia Luo thought for a moment and slowly spoke. What do you mean? You don't have to apologize. From the situation of the battle, what you did was right. It's better to say that I'm proud of you, but we have different perspectives. Yes, for me, your body is more important than anything else. Facing Xia Luo's question, Luo Ye gave a flat answer. The red-haired girl widened her eyes, then her lips opened for a while, and her face blushed as she turned her eyes away. Seeing this, the black-haired young man continued, Wait, dear, what are you talking about? I can hold on until now because you are by my side, protecting me day and night like a knight, so don't blame yourself anymore, okay? That will make my heart ache. The young man and girl comforted each other and looked at each other affectionately. Their pupils were full of the other half's reflection. After a while, they hugged and kissed, and the 2 hearts became more and more difficult to separate. However, what the black-haired young man didn't know was that under this peace, some things were quietly changing. Chapter 493. After the exploration of the ruins, the Sorofia family could be said to be in a predicament. As monsters that existed since ancient times, many of the 6 calamities didn't have physical bodies, such as the Mist of Concealment. After the tragedy of the Tucker Fortress, the Saint Maester Empire, the Country of Knights, and the Country of Scholars invested countless manpower and material resources into the mission to search for this hateful monster. However, after nearly a year, the result was nothing. Luo Ye was pessimistic about Rose's search operation, but this wasn't the worst for the young man. The worst was Xia Luo's condition. Although her condition had slowed down a lot, the reddish-brown-haired young lady's condition was still deteriorating. This could be proven from the various data provided by Rose. In fact, the young lady was indeed a little abnormal recently. She had become more and more sleepy. At night, by the candlelight at the dining table, a black-haired young man sat in front of the table while holding the reddish-brown-haired young lady in his arms. One reason for this was that the 2 of them were inseparable. Luo Ye didn't want to let go of the elf lady in his arms. The other reason was because of her health. Xia Luo had been eating less and less recently. The young lady was a little picky about food, and now, she was even a little malnourished. The only exception was when she was in the young man's arms. The shy young lady naturally resisted Luo Ye's tyranny, but the result was forcefully suppressed by the young man. Physically, she was pressed back into his arms and turned her head away. Luo Ye's countermeasure was to keep holding her until the young lady ate. 1 hour wasn't 1 hour for each of them, but 1 hour for the total. In other words, if Xia Luo didn't eat properly, Luo Ye would starve after the time limit. In the beginning, the young lady didn't care about this. However, ever since she was picky about food, Luo Ye really didn't eat and starved herself for an entire night. Xia Luo didn't dare to fool around anymore. For the 100 Birds Hall, which had been tense for a long time because of Xia Luo's illness, the time when the two of them ate was the most relaxing time. However, today this situation changed. In front of the dinner table, the delicacies were already laid out. However, the youth's face did not have the usual smile, and the atmosphere around him was quiet and oppressive. He did not say a word, but the oppressive atmosphere spread to everyone in the dining hall. In front of him was the reason why Luo Ye was in such a state. Just a minute ago, the reddish-brown-haired girl was still leaning on the boy's chest coquettishly, waiting for Luo Ye to feed her favorite dessert. However, when the boy withdrew his fork, the expectant Xia Luo had already fainted. When he saw this scene, the black-haired boy was in disbelief. His originally smiling face suddenly froze, and his hand was raised in the air for a long time before he slowly withdrew it. With the sound of cutlery being placed on a plate, the black-haired boy's aura erupted under the influence of his emotions. Xia Luo's sleepiness was a common occurrence during this period of time, but it was rare for her to suddenly fall into a coma like this. This was the first time she fell into a coma while interacting with Luo Ye. Looking at the pale and unconscious Xia Luo, the black-haired boy's mood was unbearable for a moment. He stretched out his trembling hand to touch the girl's cheek, but before he could touch it, his vision blurred. During this period of time, in order to take care of Xia Luo's emotions, not only Luo Ye, but all the servants in the mansion tried their best to maintain a smile. Even if the girl's illness was getting worse and worse, Gu Lacey and the others would never show sadness in front of Xia Luo. However, as Luo Ye's heart was broken by this inadvertent incident, the maids around him also lost control of their emotions and wiped away their tears. However, this short period of time was now interrupted by the illness. This made Luo Ye's mood difficult to calm down. After calming down and thinking for a moment, the black-haired boy softly called out, "Lord Luo Ye, I'm here. Is the medical team's result out? What about the ruins?" "I see." Xia Luo's illness this time, with the development of time and the development of the illness, gradually fermented among the higher-ups of the Rothschild family. In order to save this talented heir, the only person with the atavistic bloodline of the Sorofia family, the Rothschild family could be said to be doing their best. In fact, Xia Luo's father, Bruce, was anxiously rushing to the Rothschild family. Even the military had begun to send people to think of a solution. But it had to be said that for the 6 disasters, more people didn't necessarily mean more power. Occasionally, in the middle of the night, Luo Ye would feel a kind of intuition similar to when the fog of concealment attacked the Tuk fortress. It was like being watched by something ominous in the dark. This feeling also appeared when he was with Xia Luo before. It could be seen that the enemy may have been watching them. Because of Luo Ye's arrival, they didn't dare to act rashly for the time being. So inferring from this, does it mean that the 6 disasters are far from growing to the strength they should have? After waking up from the coma, Xia Luo's body was very weak and her condition was very bad. However, when she found that dinner time had passed when she fell asleep, she panicked. "Don't worry, I've already asked Gu Lacey to order a new meal. There's no time limit today, I'll eat with you." Well, the documents of the joint army have basically been dealt with. Just treat it as a rare rest. After the sudden accident, the two of them had a happy time. As time passed, Xia Luo's physical examination report finally came out. The medical team of the Sorofia family could be said to be a combination of Shiya's top extraordinary healers. Although they were helpless in the face of the curse brought by the 6 disasters, their physical examination and prediction of the condition were basically accurate. As far as the results were concerned, Luo Ye's previous guess was not wrong. According to many data, Xia Luo's condition had reached the verge of eruption, and the symptoms were that she was in a coma. If it deteriorated further, the girl was likely to not wake up and continue to be weak until she died. After reading this report, Luo Ye's mood was indescribable, but now he didn't have time to be sad and afraid because the maid in front of him was crying. Seeing such a pessimistic result, Go Lacey, who had been holding on, finally collapsed. He didn't dare to let Xia Luo see this. However, Luo Ye knew that this was meaningless. As a high-level extraordinary, the girl was actually very clear about her own body, but she usually didn't say it. So that's the case, it's already to the extent that her life will be in danger if it continues to deteriorate? Dear, can I ask you for a favor? Under the candlelight, looking at the red-haired girl, Luo Ye asked in confusion. Hearing the young man's words, Xia Luo narrowed her emerald eyes and smiled as if she was recalling something. I want to see that rose-colored forest again. Chapter 494. For people who were about to meet death, any salvation from others was a life-saving straw. It was an existence that they should cherish and be grateful for. In theory, this argument was correct, but in reality, for some people, there were some ways of salvation that they could not accept. In Xia Luo's eyes, Luo Ye's plan didn't benefit the young man at all. Instead, he had to sacrifice his health and even risk death. This was unacceptable to Xia Luo, who valued the person she loved more than herself. The Fallen, this was the gathering of evil cultists that Luo Ye had been fighting against for a while. They had been enemies with the chosen king family since 1,000 years ago, and their methods were unpredictable. They had created countless vicious cases in history. Being targeted by such a mysterious organization and falling into a weakened state was undoubtedly the biggest flaw. From the current information, the mother goddess of the 6 disasters and the savior are enemies. They can't fight together. This is a matter of faith, so it's difficult for the Fallen to know that I'm in a weakened state. On the other hand, Dean Antonio and the Vatican are searching for them on a large scale, so the Fallen won't have time to be distracted. That's true, but so what? My goal is to face all difficulties with you, whether it's the curse of the 6 disasters or the attack of the Fallen, it's all the same. Living alone isn't happiness. My happiness is the happiness of 2 people together. Most importantly, I don't want our child to be motherless. 1 second, remember. That's right, we're blessed by Pei Tila, who's in charge of reproduction. Although we only did it once, but maybe we're already pregnant. Hearing Luo Ye's words, Xia Luo's emerald eyes suddenly widened, and her breathing became slightly hurried. She lowered her head and touched her belly, and for a moment, her expression was conflicted. Now that she had experienced all kinds of hardships, the first half of her wish had been fulfilled, and after this night, there seemed to be hope for the second half to be fulfilled. When she thought that she might already have a little life in her belly, Xia Luo couldn't control her emotions and couldn't say the words to give up her life. Dear Xia Luo, do you know the vows that people make when they get married? Yeah, I know that too. I remember there's a line in it. Even sickness and death cannot separate us. Xia Luo's body trembled slightly when she heard the young man's words. She raised her head and whispered in disbelief. Well, in fact, I asked Pei Tila to make the ring not just as a curse vessel. Although I can't hold the ceremony because of your body, at least tonight when we become husband and wife, I want to put this ring that symbolizes love on your hand. Not only for your body, but also for our feelings. Miss Xia Luo Sorofia, are you willing to accept this ring and marry me? The young man's question echoed in the room, causing Xia Luo's eyes to widen and his body to tremble with excitement. Such a reason is too cunning. Isn't it impossible to refuse? Under Luo Ye's nervous gaze, Xia Luo raised her hand gently after a long silence. She smiled with tears in her eyes and said, the slightly choked words echoed in the room. The black-haired young man smiled with relief when he heard the words. He stretched out his hand and carefully held the girl's palm. He gently put the crystal-clear ring on the girl's finger. After that, the girl took the ring and put it on Luo Ye's finger. The silence lasted for a while, but the atmosphere between the two became more and more heated. Whether it was Xia Luo or Luo Ye, they both understood that the strong feelings could no longer be expressed in words, so there was only one way to express it. Yesterday evening, when the reddish-haired girl ordered all the servants to leave, Gu Lacey knew what his miss was thinking. This night may have been a sleepless night for Luo Ye and the others, but in fact, Gu Lacey didn't sleep much. Rather, he was worried about the maid urinating. But after morning came, there was no movement in the gem necklace as time passed. Looking at the rising sun, the other servants were worried, but Gu Lacey was excited. Thinking of this, Gu Lacey excitedly clenched his fists. He knew that his miss was most likely going to succeed. In the carriage, the young man hugged the exhausted girl who had fallen into a deep sleep. He looked at her adorable sleeping face and thought about everything that had happened. Xia Luo was very concerned about children. This was something that Luo Ye had discovered long ago. Although Shi Ye's humans lived in an unstable environment, Xia Luo's desire to have children was stronger than others. Gently exhaling, the black-haired young man looked at the ring on the girl's hand. An indescribable warmth emerged in his heart. But it had to be said that although the ring had been worn, the blessing of the Earth Mother had not yet taken effect. After all, the girl's health had just improved, and the burden of pregnancy was still too heavy. The young man and girl's long night finally came to an end. The exhausted two only woke up in the afternoon. But unlike usual, when they woke up, their room was in a mess. Go take a bath first, there are many marks on your body. The two of them entered the bathroom together. However, what was different this time was that the young man and the young woman did not separate. Instead, they soaked in the pool together. Seeing Gu Lacey and the others tidying up the bed, the reddish-brown miss was extremely shy. She buried her face in Luo Ye's chest like a coward. Seeing this, Luo Ye had no choice but to take the girl to fill her stomach and recover her strength. She had yet to recover from the pain of the first time, and because of the extreme passion, she had to start the second time. After working so hard, it was only natural that the girl could not withstand it. Even if she had the constitution of an extraordinary, it would be difficult for her to move around today. Before this trip, Luo Ye had been chased out of the bedroom by Xia Luo. Because of a series of affairs, the young man had almost forgotten about this matter. But he did not expect to get the answer last night. It seemed that because Luo Ye was usually too calm, Xia Luo was worried about her own charm. In order to increase the success rate, she prepared these things, but she did not expect that the final result would almost cause Luo Ye to lose control. After trying to control his thoughts, Luo Ye and Xia Luo began their usual lovey-dovey time at the dining table. But unlike usual, the two were sweeter today. Even the experienced and knowledgeable maids of the Sorofia family had never seen such a sparkling and translucent ring that seemed to emit a faint radiance at all times. As for Grace, who was a high-ranked extraordinary, she had a deeper understanding of it. Not only did her relationship with the young man go smoothly, this love even received the blessings of the gods. Such a good match was rare in the world. However, what the maid did not know was that in fact, this level of blessings was not enough to satisfy Pei Tila. The golden-haired Earth Mother had already reached the point of longing for children. Xia Luo, I'm afraid we can't go back to Rose for the time being. Hearing the words of the black-haired young man, the brown-haired young lady nodded slightly and immediately understood the young man's meaning. Since they wanted to lure the snake out of its hole, then Xia Luo and Luo Ye naturally could not return to Rose. After all, for the 6 disasters that had not yet formed, Rose was a big country that could not be destroyed. It would not appear there in any case. Similarly, other big cities must be ruled out. My dear, what you mean is... Looking at the brown-haired young lady, Luo Ye said with a helpless smile, but his words were exceptionally serious. Feeling Luo Ye's silent trust, Xia Luo slightly clenched her hands. Dear, if I make a mistake... Family? I understand, dear, leave this matter to me. After taking 2 deep breaths, Xia Luo smiled and took over this heavy responsibility. As the young lady used her bloodline ability to astrology and divination, the gem necklace team set off again and drove to the distant destination. Chapter 495. In a sense, Luo Ye's world was in the hands of the goddess of fate. The creator of Shi Ye's world was the primordial goddess Shi Ye, not the goddess of fate. The direction of fate might have been set from the beginning, but it wasn't unchangeable. After experiencing countless life and death crises, he finally reversed his fate. Such an experience could be said to be one of a kind, and it was precisely because of this that the black-haired young man understood the power of fate. Luo Ye felt that it was his lifetime fortune to be favored by the young lady and poured all of his trust in her. But it had to be said that even with the blessing of the goddess of fate, it was still difficult to divine the six calamities. For example, the war that was breaking out now. In theory, divination could predict the direction of the war, but in reality, it was impossible to do so because this war involved the fate of two races. For the six calamities, it was especially troublesome because of their high level. Only Xia Luot, who had the blessing of the goddess of fate, could barely attempt to peek at the clues through fate. But even so, it had to be done in stages. Scales of fate. With the accumulation of weights, the angle of the scales was gradually flattened. When it reached the third coin, the scales finally tilted slightly to the young lady's side. Seeing this scene, Xia Luot finally made his move. After the scales were flattened, the crisp sound of coins being tossed into the air sounded. The ancient gold coin reflected the light and flipped up and down in the air, bouncing up and down on the table. Under the gaze of the young lady, it drew circles and rolled, finally falling to the corner of the astrology chart with many stars drawn. Xia Luot. Time 3 days. The direction is east. It had been a week since the two exchanged rings in the Murat forest. During this time, the gemstone necklace team had been advancing according to the results of Xia Luot's divination and had now entered the vast eastern plains. Regarding Xia Luot's curse, the Sorofia family had long been helpless. After opposing Luo Ye's plan, there were no alternative measures at all. In this case, Xia Luot's time was running out. It didn't seem like a big deal to spend the last time with his loved one, but what if a miracle really happened? After the opposition turned into support, the Sorofia family quickly sent a large number of elites to accompany the gemstone necklace team to prevent the attack of the cultists from interfering with the plan. Master Andrew and other high-grade transcendents returned to the country, waiting for the target to appear and use spells to provide quick support. Even the Sorofia family didn't know about Luo Ye's current state, so the possibility of the outside world obtaining this information was naturally reduced to the lowest. After this period of observation, Luo Ye could basically confirm that the 6 disasters already knew about their situation. It was obvious that Luo Ye's behavior and unique aura made the disaster monster feel that something was wrong and took action to use the curse to kill the two of them together. But as the young man expected, that 6 disasters' curse was completely ineffective against him who had 2 crown stones. At this point, the attack and defense had reversed. Luo Ye and Xia Luot had become the waiting party, while the 6 disasters had to hide for a long time. This situation was obviously not what the other party wanted to see. If this situation continued, the disaster monster would definitely take action. Chapter 496. More than half a month after the start of the journey, Luo Ye and Xia Luot's relationship further warmed up, but correspondingly, the state of the two people was getting worse and worse. For this situation, the maids who found that the two people's bodies were getting worse day by day were naturally worried, but for the boys and girls who were already prepared, this was equivalent to good news to a certain extent. Xia Luot was lying on the boy's chest at this time, listening to the boy's heartbeat with a worried face, and Luo Ye was stroking the girl's back as if he was comforting Xia Luot's emotions. Both of them knew that the expected day was coming. It's getting closer and closer to us. Well, it should be about time. Seeing the girl's reaction, Luo Ye couldn't help but stop. The boy lowered his eyes and looked at Xia Luot's emerald eyes. He was about to ask something, but he didn't expect the girl to speak first. Afraid? It's too smooth. Indeed. Although the smooth development of things was a good thing for the boy, and the information collected so far didn't have any negative news, it had to be said that sometimes too smooth was a strange thing. When in the eastern region, Luo Ye's understanding of power was still immature. Before the incident at Tucker Fortress, he was only 4 source level, not even a high-level extraordinary. But in the face of such Luo Ye, hidden fog hesitated for a long time and finally gave up its original plan to devour everything around it. It could be seen that even when the boy was weak, 6 disasters generally didn't dare to challenge Luoya, but this time, the other party seemed to be too bold. Was it because the temptation of being able to solve the problem of the Highland Elf bloodline and the crown source substance holder in one fell swoop? Or was this 6 disasters, different from the past and had other means? Dear, in fact, I'm just guessing without any basis. Don't think too much. If your mood is bad, it will also affect your body. The black-haired youth said as he looked at Xia Luo. The reddish-brown-haired girl hesitated for a moment before gently nodding her head. Seeing this, Luoya was even more certain. Should we stop for now and report this to the higher-ups of the alliance? Dean Antonio and the others will definitely help. After thinking for a while and realizing that this proposal was not feasible, Xia Luo's face showed a worried expression. Luoya, on the other hand, had a calm expression as he gently hugged the girl to comfort her. As the guardian of the goddess of fate, Xia Luo often said that everything was destined. If one had to define their current situation, Luoya also felt that it was destined. It's fine. Actually, I've already made some preparations. Besides, I can't stop now even if you want me to. Chapter 497. When the tide of darkness appeared at the end of the horizon, within the jewel necklace caravan, a reddish-brown-haired girl was lying weakly on the bed. Her complexion was more serious than usual, and she looked weak as if she could disappear at any time. Finally, you've shown yourself? So it's like this. Cuff cuff. The black-haired boy wasn't surprised by the abnormality outside the window. After facing these monsters of disaster several times, Luoya was already familiar with this kind of heavenly pressure. However, this time, the boy didn't feel any fear in his heart. Instead, the anger that had been buried in his heart for a long time began to surge. The girl's current situation was hovering on the edge of eternal sleep. However, even if her life was hanging by a thread, the reddish-brown-haired girl only had the black-haired boy in her eyes. The worry in her heart was the same. Yes, he's afraid of the crown origin substance. I have to go, and only I can go. Her white jade hand reached for Luoya in front of her, but halfway there, she had no strength. Fortunately, before her hand fell, the boy reached out and grabbed her hand and placed it beside his cheek. Seeing this, the girl revealed a faint smile and said in a weak voice, "What?" The girl's voice echoed in the silent room. Although her words were weak, Xia Luo looked at the boy with a mysterious power and exceptionally clear eyes. Although it didn't seem like much, in order to protect Xia Luo's life, Luoya's body was already extremely weak. The girl wasn't the only one with a pale face. Luoya was also pale. Xia Luo knew what it meant to let Luoya take off the ring. Without the sharing of life force, the girl who carried all the curses would almost certainly die. However, even so, in order to give Luoya a better chance of winning, in order to let the boy defeat the enemy and survive, Xia Luo resolutely made this request. Let's not talk about how much help this will be for me. This ring is the symbol of our love. Before you hate me, I will never take it off. Xia Luo, don't forget our promise. I will never abandon you. Hearing Luoya's soft reminder, the girl slightly widened her eyes. Of course, she remembered the promise they made to live and die together. She couldn't help but weaken a little. Even so, Luoya still couldn't be at ease. Luoya, who thought so, had a worried expression. After thinking for a moment, he silently activated the curse power. As if he was about to say goodbye before a battle. He leaned over and kissed Xia Luo full of love. The moment their lips touched, the girl couldn't help but widen her eyes. Go to sleep. When you wake up, everything will be over. Good night, Xia. Chapter 499. Frozen Earth Creator. This was a monster that left a terrifying mark in Xia's history. When the giant's body was engulfed, the warriors in the distance couldn't help but stop their actions. They widened their eyes, not understanding why Luoya targeted his own tamed demon. In the sky, the monster of disaster let out a strange cry. Its eyes stared at Luoya as if it was restless. In the sky, the black mass of curses continued to surge and expand. The eyes of the huge figure flickered. Below, the black-haired young man faintly curled up the corners of his mouth. His eyes were filled with determination and murderous intent. No matter how powerful the Lord of Death Tide's curse was, it couldn't stop the other 6 disasters' ability. Just like what Luoya did, he used the twilight wind to seal off the sky, making it impossible for him to escape. After that, he used the frozen earth creator as his weapon. In the middle of the freezing air, the black-haired young man reached out his hand. The crystal-like power of the crown condensed into a solid form. It drifted between heaven and earth with the howling night wind, penetrating into the deepest layer of the freezing air. Along with the influx of the crown fragments, the explosive power of the curse began to increase rapidly under the cover of the fog. Using blood as the price to further increase the power of the curse. This was a method that Shiya's cursemancers often used. However, to Luoya, this was a crazy move. Life towards death sensed the young man's condition and started to explode. The young man's body was surrounded by an extremely dense curse power, and it immediately caused the Lord of the Dead Tide in the sky to be wary. After a short moment of restlessness, the Lord of Death Tide suddenly roared as if it sensed something. Its fierce scream was like the wail of the dead, causing fear to emerge from the hearts of all the creatures in the dark sky. In the next moment, a huge black mass of curses swooped down toward the black-haired young man. In this critical moment, the black-haired young man didn't do anything. Instead, he closed his eyes. On his body, a crimson radiance began to emerge together with the gushing cold air, intertwining and fusing with each other. Under the young man's smile, the fog gradually dispersed, revealing the figure of the Gulandair. However, this time, the tall giant had changed his appearance. Floating ice crystals revolved around his body and the majestic frozen earth energy became his armor. On top of the Gulandair's head, the crimson crown emanated a magnificent radiance, bringing irresistible power. Although the crown stone and the King Selection blood were both Luoya's abilities, they had always been 2 different powers. Or perhaps, they belonged to 2 different systems. But in fact, it wasn't that these 2 different systems didn't have any intersection at all. And the intersection between them was Luoya himself. The crown shard was the glory of the past brought by the crown source substance. It was also the ability to crown the kings of the races who dominated the world in the past. When Luoya returned the crown, his curse power would strengthen Gulandair and the others through the power of the crown source substance. This time, the young man used his own blood. Under the shroud of the cold air, the Lord of Death Tide's untouchable defense was nullified and the Gulandair had no more scruples. Witnessing this unbelievable scene, the monster in the sky roared angrily. The strong sense of danger made the blurry figure of the curse even more distorted. However, as if it didn't want to believe this fact, after a short period of madness, the black rain once again rose into the sky and turned into the ultimate disaster. It suddenly fell towards the Gulandair who rushed out of the fog. But this time, the result was completely different from before. The silvery white cold air rushed into the sky, and wherever it passed, the restless curse power would freeze and shatter. The Lord of Death Tide, this gigantic body that covered the sky was like a black jelly. The giant's fist penetrated through its body, and the monster screamed in agony. Countless black curse power disintegrated like flesh and blood, and it gradually dissipated in the white fog. Before the broken body could recover, the black mass that covered the sky suddenly began to roll and shrink. In an instant, the vast night sky reappeared, and on the other side, the black disaster had turned into a meteor and crashed down. In the sky, the black mass formed by the curse power fell like a meteor and returned the sky to the stars. However, whether it was Luoya or Gelt and the others who were fighting in the distance, all of the extraordinary individuals present knew that it wasn't a desperate escape. It was a desperate gamble. Chapter 500. When the flickering light collided with the endless darkness, the violent repulsion of the curse caused the entire area to collapse. Luoya and the Lord of the Dead Tide his body also rapidly crumbled. Life towards death was indeed a skill that could reverse the situation and turn defeat into victory. But just like anomalies and vessels, the excessive power had begun to harm Luo Ye, and the young man knew that this was unavoidable. The black turbid current was unleashed under the rapidly depleting curse. In order to survive, the Lord of the Dead Tide had overdrawn its potential as one of the 6 calamities. The black-haired young man also poured his life into this attack. The giant's fist was like an unsinkable warship, riding the wind and breaking the waves of the Black Sea. Whether it was the starry night sky or the vast land, whether it was the ice that was harder than steel or the curse that almost no weapon could harm, everything was incomparably fragile at this moment. In the fierce clash, Luo Ye's consciousness gradually blurred, but his tenacious willpower allowed him to stand on the border of life and death and not take a step forward. Protecting the glory of mankind, leaving his name in history, and possible rewards appeared one after another. But in the face of these, Luo Ye didn't show too much reluctance until the figure of the red-haired girl appeared in front of him. Being attacked by this terrifying calamity was fate for Xia Lu. It was a fact that had been decided since the moment she was born and bore the bloodline of the Highland Elves. From this perspective, Luo Ye was actually the outsider who suddenly intruded into the battle. In fact, the Lord of the Dead Tide was indeed afraid of the crown and didn't act rashly, but so what? If death was the girl's fate, then Luo Ye was the one who changed this fate. And now, he wanted to use his actions to prove that whether it was the terrifying calamity of extinction or the predestined fate, nothing could take the girl away from him. The source of the 6 calamities could be found to be the Mother Goddess, an existence that surpassed the gods in ancient times. It seemed to have inherited the Mother Goddess's level, and the power of the 6 calamities was also strange and unpredictable. Even the gods were not immune to it, let alone ordinary saints. Under the protection of countless enchantments, the warriors of family Sorophia raised their heavy shields that were shining with the luster of gems and surrounded the carriage. They firmly blocked the drifting black curses and frost outside of the shields. Meanwhile, the warriors of the country of knights had already retreated to defend. Everyone was nervously staring at the intense conflict between black and white in the distance. Once the black-haired youth was defeated, the terrifying calamity would definitely extend its claws to the others. Even if it was on its last breath, as one of the 6 calamities, the Lord of the Dead Tide, whose power level was far higher than normal extraordinary individuals, it could still kill everyone present. Boom! The tall Gelt temporarily transformed into a giant. He held a heavy shield at the forefront, and a layer of ice hung on his body. Selena and the others surrounded the carriage and released their spells, stabbing their weapons into the ground to stabilize their bodies. The sound of the explosion shook everyone's eardrums. The intense light illuminated the sky and the earth. Under the strong light, everything in the vicinity seemed to be buried in a white light. It was not until a few seconds later that the light slowly faded. After a brief moment of silence, the warriors crawled up from the ground and regrouped. The Cursemancers quickly repaired the enchantments that were almost completely destroyed. However, after that attack, no explosion, light, or shockwave appeared again. Before the battle began, Luo Ye had instructed them to never get close to the battle site. If the final result was not satisfactory, they were to immediately leave with Xia Luot and seal her in the crystal made by the gem spell. They were to wait for the final hope. That area has been covered by the power of the 6 calamities. Even I can't see it. The black-haired maid looked at the dim distance with a conflicted heart. However, inside the gem necklace, the originally pale brown-haired girl on the bed who looked like she could die at any time was quickly recovering. The sleeping spell was unknowingly broken by this torrent. The brown-haired girl's eyelids gently moved for a moment before she finally slowly opened her eyes. We won. At the last moment of the battle, the Lord of the Dead Tide, who had fallen into madness, released an attack that exceeded Luo Ye's expectations. Even so, it still couldn't defeat Luo Ye and the Gulandair who displayed their full potential. That was an attack, but it wasn't an attack. To a certain extent, it was similar to a concept. For a long time, the black-haired young man had doubts in his heart. He didn't know why the Gulandair didn't use weapons. After all, in terms of body structure, humans and giants were actually quite similar. In fact, in various myths and legends, giants often fought with weapons. Right in front of Luo Ye's eyes, the fist that almost crushed space hit the Lord of the Dead Tide. This calamity that had been rampant since ancient times was completely shattered into pieces. Then, the cold air that covered the sky swept across and all the curses turned into ice fragments. The moment the black curses completely dissipated, Luo Ye's tense nerves finally relaxed. The death of the Lord of the Dead Tide not only eliminated a huge threat to the human world, but also completely cut off the curse of 2 generations of the Sorophia family. It also had a major impact on the human world as a whole. Xia Luot Sorophia's fate had completely changed. The bloodline of the Highland Elves was preserved. After the monster that constantly devoured the girl's life was eliminated, the Rose Commercial Union and the Sorophia family would enter a stable state. With this as the cornerstone, the logistics base of the human alliance would no longer be a problem. The soldiers on the battlefield would also be able to obtain supplies faster. Looking at the slowly dissipating black curses, the young man felt a sense of security and accomplishment that he had never felt before. However, what Luo Ye didn't expect was that dangers suddenly appeared at the last moment. It was a kind of fear that was similar to standing outside the door and being watched by someone through the peephole. It was a feeling that only appeared when one was in an absolute danger zone and was at an absolute disadvantage. Mother Goddess. This time, it was in the real world. In this situation, being watched by Mother Goddess in the real world, there could only be one reason, and that was that Luo Ye killed the 6 disasters. Then, as a form of revenge, would Mother Goddess take advantage of the fact that he was extremely weak and could even be said to be on the verge of death? Luo Ye, who had no other choice, could only stand still and let the time pass by. After an unknown amount of time, that creepy gaze suddenly disappeared, and the next moment, the long-awaited system prompt sounded. Crusade successful, detected Crown Stone mutated body, initiating primary evaluation. There is a certain risk in absorbing, system activating auxiliary system. Yes/no, since the system allowed him to absorb the Crown Stone, at least it meant that the surrounding environment had stabilized. In other words, Mother Goddess should have disappeared. The system prompt was still ringing, but unfortunately, at this time, Luo Ye didn't even have the strength to answer. After going through a bloody battle in an extremely weak state and being watched by Mother Goddess, the young man's body was like a lamp that had run out of oil. At this time, the black-haired young man's surroundings were deathly silent. Only the cursed remains of the Lord of the Dead Tide, as death shrouded the surroundings like a dark cloud. The thick black cloud circled around him, but it also sealed all his hopes. When a person dies, they will leave behind a corpse, and after the Lord of the Dead Tide died, it left behind an aimless curse. The density of the curse wasn't something that an outsider could approach. And now that he couldn't even stand, Luo Ye couldn't walk out of this area alone. "Dear!" After the sudden warm light, a familiar sobbing voice sounded. The next moment, a red-haired girl suddenly appeared and hugged the boy tightly in her arms. Chapter 501. When the reddish-brown-haired girl opened her eyes from her deep sleep, the stars were already flickering in the sky. Looking at the stars that had escaped from the terrifying calamity, Charlot's consciousness wasn't clear yet, and her emerald eyes were filled with confusion. Time slowly passed. Not long after, the girl woke up and her eyes gradually glowed. Then her body trembled slightly. She widened her eyes as if she had understood something. Her emerald eyes were filled with surprise. Everything was telling her that the long suffering had ended. Of course, she immediately recalled the young man who promised to give her a new life before she fell into a deep slumber. She muttered the young man's name and struggled to get up. Her movement immediately attracted the attention of the maids. The maids excitedly supported the girl out of the carriage. Gu Lacey cried tears of joy when he saw Xia Lot. The guards of the Sorophia family couldn't help but cheer. However, the red-haired girl didn't feel much joy. Xia Luot's emerald eyes scanned the surroundings, searching for Luo Ye's figure. After asking Go Lacey, the girl shifted her gaze to the distant darkness. Then she looked at the churning black clouds and felt that something was wrong. The moment she felt this strange yet familiar curse, Xia Luo widened her eyes and instantly understood the situation. Then she made a prompt decision and brought Go Lacey and the others to the final battlefield. Remember, Xia Luo and the others wanted to find Luo Ye, but they were forced to stop. When the cursed black clouds blocked their path, even Gelt and the others who had foreign bloodline showed a fearful expression. Even if the Lord of the Dead Tide's body had perished, it wasn't a place where humans could set foot on. Although Xia Luo could transfer her vitality to the black-haired young man due to the effect of the symbiosis ring, this didn't guarantee Luo Ye's survival. Severe external injuries would cause a large amount of vitality to leak out in a short period of time. This wasn't something that the ring's ability could catch up with. Once it crossed the line of life and death, the young man's ending would still be death. The curses in the air became thicker and thicker, causing the young lady who had just recovered from her illness to turn pale once again. However, Charlotte didn't care about this at all. After breaking through the black clouds formed by layers of curses, the young lady finally found that familiar figure. Dear! Luo Ye's face was extremely pale. It was almost transparent and didn't look like a living being at all. Looking at the young man, Xia Luo's tears couldn't stop flowing. At this time, the young man's curse power was completely exhausted. His vitality was almost completely maintained by the ring. Even the fluctuation of his curse power had disappeared. However, this wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was Luo Ye's physical condition. After defeating the Lord of the Dead Tide, Luo Ye's curse power was completely exhausted. Without the curse power, the young man couldn't stop the bleeding and the passage to the ancient gods was closed. In fact, when Xia Luo checked, the young man's blood had less than a third left. When she realized this fact, the red-haired girl almost broke down. Even if it was a high-level extraordinary, losing half of their blood would be life-threatening. Now that Luo Ye only had a third of his blood left, it was almost certain that he would die. Originally, Xia Luo wanted to bring the young man out for treatment. However, after checking Luo Ye's condition, this idea was immediately dismissed. Because Luo Ye could die from a bump and there wasn't enough time. Biting her lips, the red-haired girl thought hard. After a while, she seemed to have thought of something. She stretched out her hand and cut open her wrist. The black-haired young man was in danger. In the end, the root cause was excessive blood loss. In this case, the effect of a direct blood transfusion was far better than some curses. Moreover, there was no need to worry about the problem of blood type. The rejection of the blood was what Xia Luo was most worried about. Once it happened, not only Luo Ye, but even Xia Luo would be implicated. There was even a risk that the young man's king's blood would reverse the process and destroy his blood. Originally, this was something the girl absolutely couldn't do. However, in order to save Luo Ye's life, Xia Luo resolutely chose to try. Chapter 502. In the past, Luo Ye had experienced several life and death battles, but it had to be said that even those unimaginable life and death battles spanning hundreds of years had never let the young man truly experience the taste of death. If it weren't for the ring of symbiosis that kept him alive, Luo Ye could be considered to have perished together with that terrifying disaster. And because of that, it was extremely difficult for the young man to wake up this time. After a long period of effort, Luo Ye finally recovered a little. The sounds in his ears gradually became clearer, and as his hearing recovered, many voices began to intermittently enter Luo Ye's ears. Move faster. Save your life first. First, it was the voice of the Sorofia family's medical team that he had heard before. Noisy reports and orders were in a mess, and the sound of spells being activated was incessant. And after that, it was a close distance, choked with sobs, but it seemed to be exceptionally weak. Such a large amount of blood loss was extremely dangerous even for an extraordinary. It could even lead to brain death and becoming a vegetable. In order to prevent this from happening, Xia Luo desperately tried to wake the young man up. After Luo Ye opened his eyes, he didn't see anything. To be precise, the young man's vision was pitch black. And as if sensing the abnormality in the young man's eyes, the reddish-brown girl asked in a trembling voice. Ischemic blindness. This was a symptom that had a certain probability of occurring after a large amount of blood loss. It was almost incurable for ordinary people, but it could be recovered for extraordinary people whose bodies surpassed that of humans. In fact, this situation often occurred when soldiers on the front lines escaped from close combat. If in the past, Luo Ye sacrificed himself to save Xia Luot, then this time, the young man really sacrificed himself for her. This sacrifice had far exceeded the level of lovers, and even the relationship between an engaged couple couldn't be compared to it. And because of this deep relationship, the young girl's heart ached. The sobbing young girl opened her mouth to apologize, but halfway through, she saw the young man shake his head slightly as if he didn't want to hear the apology from Xia Luo. Looking at Luo Ye's reaction, the reddish-brown girl was slightly taken aback. Then, she immediately understood what Luo Ye meant. Thinking of this, the young girl wiped away her tears and endured the heartache to change the topic. Looking at Luo Ye who couldn't see her, the reddish-brown girl choked with sobs and held the young man's hand tightly. I'm by your side, always, always by your side, and I'll never leave. So, sob. Miss, I understand your feelings, but the spell is about to start. Listening to Gulacy's report, the reddish-brown girl quickly glanced at the nearby conjurers who were ready, then got up and kissed the young man's face. After saying this, Xia Luot reluctantly left the bedside. The next moment, the room was filled with light. Countless gems emitted a variety of colors and gathered toward the young man on the bed. At the same time, Luo Ye felt a warm current flowing into his body and drowning him. This question didn't affect the young man too much. After all, in the past 2 months, Luo Ye didn't have the opportunity to see their abilities. Chapter 503. Luo Ye had to admit that thinking was a heavy burden when one's body wasn't in good condition, especially for the current Luo Ye. After losing a lot of blood, the young man could barely eat. This was for the sake of his body's safety, but it also limited his energy. But even so, Luo Ye managed to analyze some things in this short period of time. Although according to the current literature, this group of people obviously didn't intend to act together, it was unknown whether they could sense each other. Whether they could communicate with each other was also unknown. Thus, to prepare for the worst, it was necessary to treat them as potential threats. Needless to say, Frozen Earth Creator was still suppressed by Isha Bela Sophia's gem curse and was in a deep sleep in the sea. According to various clues, Mr. Darkness should have been completely wiped out by Luo Ye's ancestor, Vincent 700 years ago. It wouldn't be able to climb back up for a while. In the historical fragment from 400 years ago, Luo Ye obtained the Wind Summoner, It, because he changed the situation of the Saint Heroes Assembly in Leinster City. But in normal history, without Luo Ye's help, the Saint Heroes Assembly of that year was defeated and fled. The higher-ups of the Saint Heroes Assembly who safeguarded the were also nowhere to be found. And finally, after some analysis, Luo Ye felt that the most troublesome one was the fog of concealment that swallowed Tucker Fortress not long ago. Although the 6 disasters were silent monsters that came and went without a trace, they were still limited by the attribute of movement speed. From the map, it could be seen that the eastern region where Tucker Fortress was located was very far away from the human world, which was the eastern basin of the Luo Su Basin. There shouldn't be any major danger in a short period of time. After making such a judgment, the black-haired young man's body began to feel tired again. His slightly dizzy brain made Luo Ye retract his consciousness, and his eyelids became heavier. Unlike the first time she woke up, this time, there were no members of the medical team or maids coming in and out of the room. The whole room seemed a lot more spacious, but unlike the room, Luo Ye's bed was not spacious. The appearance of Xia Luot Sorofia didn't surprise the black-haired youngster, but what surprised Luo Ye was that the girl's body was wrapped in bandages just like Luo Ye's. There were also many curses on her body. Although Luo Ye didn't seem to have many wounds on his body, his vitality hadn't improved much after experiencing so many injuries. He was still on the verge of death. Therefore, he had been receiving energy from Xia Luo. After a rough estimation, Luo Ye was basically certain that he wouldn't be in any danger at this stage if he didn't borrow the girl's life force. At most, he would become weaker. Thinking of this, after seeing Xia Luo's situation, the boy naturally wanted to take off his ring to make his lover feel better. "Dear, what are you going to do?" A familiar voice suddenly sounded in his ears. The black-haired young man's body unconsciously stiffened. He turned his head slightly stiffly, and what entered Luo Ye's eyes was Xia Luo's somewhat serious face. Seeing this girl, Luo Ye immediately understood what the previous curse was about. Luo Ye naturally didn't expect this, but facing Xia Luo who discovered it, the black-haired young man still chose to stick to his idea after thinking for a while. "Liar, you can't even stand up right now, right? I don't think this is called fine." Chapter 504. Although the Sorofia family has now become one of the most famous families in Xia, in fact, they don't know much about themselves. Relying on the bloodline intuition of the Highland Elves, the Sorofia family achieved great success in business and was now the richest family in Xia. However, after this trip, the Sorofia family only knew that their ancestors were Highland Elves. But even so, they still didn't know the position of the Highland Elves in Xia, such as their relationship with the Six Calamities. Yes, this is the duty of the Highland Elves in ancient times and the reason why the gem curse can suppress the Six Calamities. Well, the curse of the Lord of the Dead Tide might not be an accident. In the worst case, not only the Lord of the Dead Tide, but the other Six Calamities might also attack you in the future. On the bed, the black-haired young man told Charlotte the information he had just learned and the analysis he had derived from it. After hearing it, the brown-haired girl was shocked and her expression turned serious. Her eyes flashed, and it was obvious that she had thought of many things that she didn't understand in the past. Now that she heard Luo Ye's explanation and knew that the Highland Elves' bloodline could suppress the Six Calamities, everything seemed reasonable. However, the girl was also a little confused. Although this was an important matter, it didn't seem necessary to mention it when they were talking about the next generation, right? You can say that. Although only one bloodline can be awakened, whether it's the Highland Elves' bloodline or the King's chosen bloodline, the suppression effect on the Six Calamities is very obvious. And the combination of the two may produce some unprecedented changes. Even if the Highland Elves' bloodline didn't awaken, it still had certain effects as a foreign bloodline. One of them was its affinity with the gem curse. In other words, if the child of Luo Ye and Xia Luo awakened the king's chosen bloodline, then there might be a person with the crown, source substance and the ability to use the high-grade gem curse. It was obvious that the Calamities absolutely couldn't tolerate this situation. Although the intelligence of the Six Calamities shouldn't be able to distinguish the difference between humans and the Akate family and the Sorofia family, they could still sense this sense of crisis. "Darling, you're saying..." The other possibility was that the Six Calamities didn't only want to take back the egg, they also wanted to kill Isha Bela and the others to prevent Isha Bela with the Highland Elves' bloodline from coming into contact with Vincent of the Akate family and giving birth to an existence that could threaten all Calamities. For this conjecture, Roja felt that the evidence wasn't enough, so he didn't say anything. But the girl who guessed something clenched her hands and was obviously uneasy. Seeing this, the black-haired boy thought for a moment and tried to persuade her. "But isn't it too much of a coincidence that our two races would be attacked by those Calamities as soon as we have a close relationship? Also, what about the child?" Charlotte couldn't hide her worry as she looked at Roja pitifully. The black-haired boy was silent for a while. "Of this, the S's? Of this, S's, SS? Lord, this, S's." Chapter 505. Whether it was in Luo Ye's previous life or in Xia's life, the side effects of the potion were one of the important criteria to judge the quality of a potion. Looking at the blushing girl in front of him, Luo Ye's brain quickly heated up. He didn't expect the BOLO strong resuscitation potion type 4 to have such an effect. However, after thinking about it carefully, he was somewhat relieved. Then, which function had deteriorated the most? When a person was sick, their energy would be weak, and they wouldn't have those messy thoughts. This could be said to be basic knowledge. In Xia Luo's case, she had been in a state of near-death for a long time. In order to conserve energy, her body would naturally shut down some functions that wouldn't pose a threat to her life. The reproductive function was the most obvious one. In fact, after that night with Luoya, the two of them hadn't done it again. It wasn't that there was a problem with their relationship, but it was that their bodies didn't allow it. They simply didn't have that kind of impulse. Now, with a bottle of potion, along with the recovery of the body, it was normal for the instinctive part of life to become active again. "Dear, it's so hot inside." Looking at the blushing elf girl, Luoya took the initiative to open his mouth and took the task. At the same time, he slightly sighed. Originally, Be on the Lookout Strong Resuscitation Potion Type 4 was given to Xia Luo by Luoya. Because the girl trusted Luoya, she didn't test the ingredients in advance. Now that there was a problem with the side effects, Luoya naturally had to solve it. At this moment, the black-haired young man finally understood what a complete set was and what a chain of consumption was. Under Xia Luo's shy gaze, Luoya simply took out a heart-shaped small bottle, unscrewed the cap, and drank half of it in one breath. The taste in the mouth was incomparable to the BOLO Strong Resuscitation Potion. Because it contained the blood of a unicorn, the taste inevitably carried a faint bloody smell. However, it had to be said that the effect was immediate. Dear, what did you drink just now?" The black-haired young man replied with a smile as he looked at the innocent young lady who didn't know much about potions. Upon hearing this, Xia Luo blinked and became even more puzzled. "Exactly what it means, but it's the antidote for your side effects." Just like that, their beautiful night officially began with the help of the medicine. It was no secret that Xia Luo wanted to have a child. The biggest reason was naturally because she loved Luoya deeply. In addition, it was also because of Ka Dia's approval. She wanted to have a family and many other factors. However, it had to be said that this matter was not easy. Is there no result this time either? Looking at the girl holding the monitoring curse vessel on the sofa and responding faintly, Luoya fell into silence for a while. Unlike the first time before, after drinking the resuscitation potion, the girl's physical functions recovered. In a short period of time, the operation state was even more intense than usual. The vitality in her body was also far higher than the first time. In theory, the possibility of gaining something in her stomach had greatly increased. For this point, Luoya could only say that the reality could not be changed based on the love between the two. Xia Luo's physique was probably more difficult to deal with than expected. Her wish might not be realized in a short time. "Dear, I'm sorry but you have worked so hard. If it were an ordinary person, I'm afraid you would have succeeded long ago." "This is indeed. It's okay. Recently, because the curse power in my body hasn't recovered, the channel between me and the ancient gods has been closed. After a while, I will find Pei Tila to find a way." Well, that's a very powerful blessing. You are not the only one who is anxious about the child. She is also very anxious. After the initial rescue operation, the bodies of the two were out of danger, and they officially entered the second stage. Experts and scholars from all over Xia began to treat the two in order to recover as soon as possible. For this situation, the consultant on the medical team euphemistically reminded the black-haired boy to restrain himself and focus on physical recuperation for the time being. Luoya was very cooperative. After all, the one who wanted to recover the most was Luoya himself, and the reason was very simple. That was the black cloud that was still outside the window. Crown Stone. This was the ability Luoya obtained by absorbing the power of 6 disasters. However, because he was in a bad state when he defeated Lord of the Dead Tide, the boy hadn't absorbed it yet. For Luoya, this was simply a plate of delicious food in front of him. He couldn't eat it. Luoya wanted to absorb the crown stone as soon as possible and avoid direct conflict with these possible enemies. After making this request, the medical team of the Sorofia family changed the previous slow recuperation plan and changed it to a short-term plan to recover a certain amount of strength as soon as possible. With this as the goal, the medical team formed by the Sorofia family began to treat the boy for a short period of time. After receiving full support, Luo Ya's operation finally began. Strictly speaking, the absorption of the crown stone didn't require Luo Ya's effort because the system could do it. But even so, the black-haired boy still chose to adhere to the principle of being cautious. "Dear, do you really have to go? Even if the monster is dead, the curse is still there. Will it affect your body?" Although Xia Luo didn't fight against Lord of the Dead Tide, and didn't even see Luo Ya's battle, the bloodline of the Highland Elf allowed her to intuitively sense the power of this terrifying disaster. The aura of the curse floating in the air was particularly familiar to the young lady. Looking at the young lady who was hesitating as if she wanted to hold on to his lover, the black-haired boy didn't immediately answer the young lady's question. After pondering for a moment, he turned around and cupped Xia Luo's cheeks with both hands. Then, how about we go together? You don't need to be alone to absorb the crown stone. Besides, you've been in there before, right? The bloodline of the Highland Elf should be resistant to these monsters. Hearing Luo Ya's sudden invitation, Xia Luo couldn't help but look hesitantly at the dark curses under the night sky. It was rare that she didn't immediately answer the young man's question. Seeing the fear in the young lady's heart, Luo Ya couldn't bear it for a moment, but he didn't say anything to stop her. Recently, when he lived with Xia Luo Ya noticed that the young lady had some different behaviors from usual. For example, she didn't like to open the window and deliberately didn't look outside. Once Luo Ya led the young lady to the window, Xia Luo would lean in the young man's arms and intentionally or unintentionally avoid the corpse of Lord of the Dead Tide. Now that Mother Goddess had begun to awaken frequently, the 6 disasters were also activated. As the heir of the Highland Elf bloodline, Xia Luo was likely to encounter these monsters in the coming days, and Luo Ya might not be able to be by the young lady's side every time. As the saying goes, the way to overcome fear is to face it head-on. Luo Ya wasn't a psychotherapist, but he was able to accompany Xia Luo. This time, the young lady accompanied Luo Ya as a protector, and the situation was similar to the last time when she broke in to save Luo Ya. Will we be in there for a long time? Time passed by little by little. The two stood facing each other under the moonlight, and the surroundings were silent. The maids waiting in the distance looked at each other worriedly. They didn't understand why the young man and young lady were so quiet. Luo Ya's will was gradually consumed as time passed, and his thoughts gradually wavered. Looking at the stiff elf lady in front of him, the black-haired young man couldn't help but soften his heart. However, before Luo Ya said anything, Xia Luo suddenly took 2 deep breaths, raised her eyes, and gave a firm answer. You agree? Stroking the ring on her hand, the young lady's eyes gradually became firm. When she raised her head again, looking at the slightly surprised young man in front of her, a smile appeared on the elf lady's face. "Xia Luo," the young lady said as she activated the curse vessel with her. The next moment, the golden soul expanded rapidly and rushed into the black curse. Surpassing oneself, this word had always been regarded as a difficult challenge, but it was also a sign of progress. Because it was based on the comparison of oneself and had nothing to do with outsiders, the difficulty of surpassing oneself was quite high, especially when it was related to some emotions. That was the love for the young man. Although she was very nervous at first, as time went by, the Highland Elf bloodline in Xia Luo's body felt the breath of 6 disasters, and the spontaneous counterattack behavior had become more and more obvious. After observing along the way, Luo Ya, who understood that the young lady had no problem, smiled. Soon after, he stopped at a place with the densest curse and nodded slightly to Xia Luo. After a certain distance, the young man looked at his system and found a familiar prompt. System determination, absorbable, estimated cost of 100,000 gold coins, do you want to absorb? Looking at the problem that appeared a few days ago, the black-haired young man couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He didn't expect the price to be so cheap this time. Before, whether it was Frozen Earthmaker or Wind Summoner, they were all absorbed by Luo Ya when they were still alive. They had a certain level of self-consciousness, so naturally, they would resist. But this time, Lord of Dead Tide, was completely destroyed by Luoya. It was equivalent to collecting a corpse, so the price was reasonable. Dane, collecting mutant, the golden soul that sensed the power of 6 disasters, shined brightly and firmly protected Xiaoluo. On Luoya's side, the surging darkness gathered around him and gradually swallowed him. For Luoya, this was a familiar feeling from the previous 2 absorption, so the young man was very calm. However, what he didn't expect was that after the system began to operate, something that he had never seen before suddenly appeared in his mind. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.